Chapter 1656. Because of this, Yang Chundong didn't believe that they would betray him. Perhaps one day, when it was proven that he was no longer around, some of them would be tempted by others to betray him. But now they definitely wouldn't. And this time, the main target of his probing wasn't them, but his successor, Yang Bo. Theoretically speaking, Yang Bo was only 11 years old and shouldn't be under so much pressure. This was because people of the same age were playing happily, and many of them were even acting spoiled in front of their parents. But so what? Different people's fates were different. Since you had to bear so much, you had to be able to withstand the pressure. Keep an eye on Yang Bo's movements and the others. Report back immediately if there's anything. Yang Chundong thought for a while and said to Wang Shan. He wasn't in a hurry to go back, but he wanted to watch the show from the sidelines. He wanted to observe everyone's performance as a bystander. Wang Shan immediately agreed. At this moment, there was a sound from the telegraph machine. The staff beside him immediately translated the contents of the telegram and sent it to the director, Wang Shan. After reading the contents, Wang Shan was delighted. He immediately presented the telegram to Yang Chundong and said, "Young master, there's news." Tian Hu sent a coded telegram. Hearing that it wasn't from his son, but from the world's first cavalry army's commander, who was also one of the 5 members of the military commission, Yang Chundong was curious. He took the telegram and read it. When he saw the contents, he couldn't help but laugh. It was also a coded telegram. Tian Hu's main idea was that he firmly supported Crown Prince Yang Bo. Before there was any news from Bugnam of Gojoseon, he represented the world's first cavalry army and the army's 2nd division to support all of Crown Prince Yang Bo's orders. And if anyone dared to have other thoughts at this time, as long as Chang Shitzi gave the order, he would lead the army and come. At that time, no matter who the opponent was, he would not let go of anyone who caused trouble. He would kill them all and clean up the family. Tian Hu was not only Yang Chundong's student, but also a fierce general. In terms of battle prowess and influence, he was one of the best in the entire army. There wasn't a single Xianxia general who didn't know about Tian Hu and the reputation of the world's #1 cavalry army. Many of the original leaders of the #1 army in the world had now become the backbone of other armies, especially Bai Shuang, Tian Feng, and the others. They had even become first-rate great generals, and had become existences akin to feudal officials. In a way, Tian Hu's incident also represented their attitude. This made Tian Hu's influence even more rare. Now that he had made a name for himself and brought the 2nd division of the army's Cold Front division to fame, his influence was naturally huge. It was not hard to imagine that anyone with some ulterior motives would become obedient after seeing this coded telegram. And with Tian Hu being the first to take the lead to support Yang Bo, presumably, there would be more and more people who would respond. This way, the overall situation would be stable. The reality was just as Yang Chundong had expected. Soon after, the governor of East Europe and the commander of the new 2nd Army, Shi Bi, also sent a coded telegram, making the same decision as Tian Hu. Not only that, she also expressed that she would, like Tian Hu, attack anyone who wanted to harm Xianxia, including those ambitious officials in Xianxia. It had to be said that back then, Yang Chundong had thought that Shibi had a good political vision, and now it had come true. Next, it was lively. The governor of East Asia and the commander of the 1st Army, Bai Shuang, the governor of India and the commander of the 2nd Army, Gong Feng, the governor of the 3 eastern provinces, Liaodong region, Lu Ji, the general Yi Ligang, the governor of Shaowei province, Yao Ingjun, the governor of the 3 southern provinces, and so on all sent a coded telegram to express their attitude. Then, some individual leaders, such as the Army's Cold Front Division, the Navy's Cold Front Division, including Yang Xie's military commission member, the Navy's deputy commander, Gao Xiong, the Army's deputy commander, Leng Song, the Air Force's deputy commander, Tian Yu, Yu Mian, the new Army's commander, Su He, and so on. They all expressed their support for Yang Bo and attacked him. They also publicly stated that they would not accept the so-called decree of the Southern Ming Emperor. Telegrams after telegrams were sent to Yang Chundong. As Wang Shan read them out word by word, his expression naturally became better and better. On the other hand, Yang Lu and Chao Jixiang, who were kneeling on the ground, had ugly expressions. Especially the latter, he had even begun to think about what kind of pressure the failure of this plan would bring to the southern Ming Empire. If it was him, he could use this as an excuse to send troops to the southern Ming Empire. After all, Zhu Qizhen's personally drafted imperial edict was now in Yang Chendong's hands. Just based on the fact that Zhu Qizhen wanted to establish Bugnam of Gojoseon, it was enough reason to send troops. Young Master, all the cabinet elders have also sent telegrams to express their support for Yang Bo. Then, eldest Crown Prince Yang Bo also sent a coded telegram. Wang Shan looked at the newly received telegrams and his face was filled with joy. Oh, what did Bo say? Yang Chendong was interested. Eldest Crown Prince said that he firmly believes that Imperial Father will be fine. He wants all the military departments to carry out their duties and not be disturbed. If something happens to Imperial Father, he will take up the heavy responsibility and send troops to the southern Ming Empire first. Wang Shan read the contents of the telegram. Yang Chendong nodded continuously after listening and said, "Not bad, he knows that the conflict has shifted." Very good. Yang Chendong was indeed very satisfied with this move. By sending troops to the southern Ming Empire to avenge himself, he would have enough time to sort everything out. In this way, after dealing with the southern Ming Empire, many things would naturally fall into place. The new throne would also be stable. Seeing that Yang Chendong seemed to be in a good mood, Wang Shan asked tentatively, "Young Master, do we also need to send a telegram to announce to the world?" "Don't be anxious, let's wait for a while." Yang Chendong's gaze fell on Yang Lu, who was kneeling on the ground. The first telegram was sent by this person. Of course, the next step was to solve his problem and announce it to the world. Reporting. A black cavalry stood outside the main cabin and said loudly, "Reporting to the 6th Young Master, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, Yang San, Yang Si, and Yang Wu's ship is approaching us. They are requesting to board the ship. Please give us your instructions." Let them in. Yang Chendong knew that the main character had arrived and could solve Yang Lu's problem, so he nodded and said, "Let them in." "Yes, 6th Young Master. Do we need to conduct a body search on them?" The Black Knight Dragon Guard asked in a clear voice. If it was in the past, no one would ask such a question. It was not for any other reason, but because these people were the most trusted people of the 6th Young Master. They were people who could be trusted. Even if someone had a problem, they would not have a problem. But now, after the incident with Yang Lu, no one dared to think that way. That was why they asked for such a request. No need, they are still Young Master's servants. They will always be my servants, Yang Chendong said with an unhappy expression. Understood. The Black Knight Dragon Guard who asked for instructions quickly retreated. Ba Dao Jiang, who was standing in the main cabin, was so shocked that he quickly apologized. 6th Young Master, the brothers below are just doing it for your safety. Please don't take it to heart. I know they are doing it for my own good. But Yang Lu is Yang Lu. He is not the same kind of person as them. Don't say such things again in the future. Yang Chendong waved his hand and interrupted Ba Dao Jiang's words. However, he knew very well that some things had happened, and it would be very difficult to go back to the beginning. This could be felt by Tiger's Mane and the others who were about to board the ship. Chapter 1657. It was still 2 words, especially with the emphasis on the pronunciation, but in the ears of Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and the others, it was completely different. At this moment, they also began to face reality. This time, Yang Lu's matter was too big, so big that they didn't know how long it would take, or even if time was enough to reverse the situation. Thank you very much. Tiger's Mane's face showed a trace of a bitter smile, and took the lead to board the ship. As they boarded the ship, they quickly found that whether it was the Black Cavalry or the Navy Cold Front warriors, they were all looking at them with scrutinizing eyes. Especially the members of the Langya Special Forces, they were staring at his every move. It was as if they were reminding him not to play any tricks. Otherwise, they would really make a move. In terms of individual combat power, Tiger's Mane and the others were naturally no match for the Wolf Fang Special Forces who trained hard every day. Therefore, in the face of such gazes, they were powerless to reprimand them. If it was in the past, if someone dared to stare at them like this, they would probably directly attack, and the other party would not dare to fight back. But now, forget it, it's better not to mention it. As a result, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and the others were also filled with anger in their hearts. Of course, this anger was not directed at Yang Chendong, and they did not dare to. Instead, it was directed at Yang Lu. Outside the main cabin, Tiger's Mane and the others stepped forward, ignoring the scrutinizing eyes of the other soldiers around them. The 5 of them all knelt on the ground and shouted towards the main cabin, "Young Master, we sinners are here. Please enlighten us, young master." "Come in." Yang Chendong naturally noticed the actions of Tiger's Mane and the others and could not help but sigh. Yang Lu's matter should not be blamed on these people, but in order to prevent such a thing from happening again, it was necessary to use this matter to warn them. None of them stood up because Yang Chendong didn't allow them to. Therefore, Tiger's Mane's group of 5 kneeled as they entered the main cabin. Then they knelt in front of Yang Chendong. "Now that you know what happened, I'll leave Yang Lu to you. As for how you want to deal with him, come up with a plan. You have to announce it to the world later, do you understand?" Yang Chendong waved his hand after saying this. Now that things had come to this, he wanted to see how Tiger's Man and the others would deal with this matter. If they still wanted to protect Yang Lu like they did in the first city, then these people could not be used. At least, they could not be put in an important position. It was impossible for a superior to not have the heart to kill decisively. With such a character, sooner or later, she would be used by others and would threaten the master's safety. Still kneeling, Tiger's Mane's group of 5 dragged the tied-up Yang Lu out of the main cabin. The 6 brothers gathered together in the side cabin. As soon as they entered the side cabin, Beta Persei was the first to stand up. He raised his leg and kicked Yang Lu's body. A stream of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. It could be seen that the strength of this kick was not small. After Beta Persei, Yang San, Yang Si, and Yang Wu also stepped forward. After a series of punches and kicks, Yang Lu knelt on the ground and kept wailing. He shouted loudly, "Brothers, don't hit him anymore. If you continue to hit him, he will die. We won't have a brother like him anymore. Who still treats you as a brother?" Beta Persei became even angrier when he heard this. He kicked him a few more times, causing Yang Lu to wail in pain again. Seeing that the brothers had beaten him up, Tiger's Mane walked forward and helped Yang Lu up. Seeing Tiger's Mane appear in front of him, Yang Lu immediately begged, Tiger's Mane, I was really confused for a moment. I was deceived by Yang Ying. He turned out to be a spy from the southern Ming Empire. I was deceived." Looking at Yang Lu's pleading face, Tiger's Mane shook his head first and then said, "You used to be rootless duckweeds. You had no food, clothes, and a place to live. It was the young master who pitied you and took you in. He gave you glory and wealth and gave you everything. But do you really think you're that strong? Let me tell you, without the young master, you're nothing. You don't even think about repaying his kindness and even want to kill your master. You're a complete bastard. Tiger's Mane's voice grew louder and louder. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. He raised his hand and slapped Yang Lu twice. Yang Lu's teeth flew everywhere. Yang Lu's face instantly became red and swollen like a big loaf of bread. "That's right. You're really a disgrace to us. Do you know, after this incident, how can we let the 6th young master trust us? I'm afraid we won't even be able to repay his kindness. And all of this is because of your wishful thinking. Now you still want to say that you were confused for a moment and that you're afraid that we'll kill you. Do you know that you're destined to die? Who cares about your life?" Yang San walked forward and said earnestly. Then, he kicked Yang Lu, who had just knelt down, to the ground. Originally, Yang Lu only had a look of regret on his face. He still had hope in his heart that with the help of these brothers, he would be fine. At least his personal safety would be guaranteed. Didn't something like this happen before? Wasn't he fine? Moreover, this time he didn't cause any substantial harm to Yang Chendong. Everything could be saved. But now, after Tiger's Mane and Yang San's words, he suddenly felt that things weren't as good as he thought. He might die. He couldn't help but cry. If his hands weren't tied, he would probably hug Yang San and the others' legs and cry. However, crying wasn't the way to solve a problem when a person did something wrong. Especially when Yang Lu made such a big mistake. He actually wanted to capture the young master and even wanted to kill the young master to replace him. This wasn't something that could be saved by others. Just like what Yang San had said before, if anyone dared to plead for Yang Lu this time, the person who pleaded for him wouldn't have a good ending. If he was in the young master's shoes, would he forgive Yang Lu's actions? Yang Lu cried, crying like a child. At this moment, he was extremely regretful. He thought about what Tiger's Mane had said. In the past, they were all children who didn't have enough to eat and wandered around. They were always thinking about when they could have a warm home. They were already very satisfied. If they could eat hot meals, it would be a great gift from the heavens. But he didn't know when it started, but his ambition became bigger and bigger. Eating good food, drinking good wine, and having different women serve him every day. These were no longer enough to satisfy him. He wanted more. He even dreamed of becoming a king with a different surname. He even wanted to take the powerful Xianxia as his own. Now that he thought about it, if this wasn't wishful thinking, then what was? If it wasn't for Yang Chendong's reminder, he wouldn't even know that his most trusted butler, Yang Ying, was actually a spy from the southern Ming Empire. Thinking about how terrifying it was, he was afraid that if he really became a king with a different surname, he wouldn't be far from death. Would Chao Jixiang and Yang Ying keep him alive once the Yang faction was completely destroyed and he was no longer of any use to them? Also, he realized that he had thought of things too simply. Even if Yang Chendong was no longer around, could he become a king? His master had a descendant. With such a promising eldest son like Yang Bo, his ambition would not be realized. This could be seen from the coded telegrams that he had just heard. At this moment, Yang Lu realized that he was like a clown who had been daydreaming all this time. To think that he was still wandering in his dreams, unable to extricate himself. Now, he had become a prisoner. Even his brothers who doted on him the most wouldn't care about him anymore. He could imagine what kind of end he would end up in. He probably couldn't even ask for a quick death. When he thought about death, he thought about how his brothers didn't save him. At this moment, Yang Lu started to become stubborn. He suddenly stopped crying and raised his head to look at Tiger's Mane, Yang San, and the others. He said angrily, "You are all people who are afraid of death. You didn't save me when I was dying. You are heartless and ungrateful. Today I, Yang Lu, have such an end. I'm afraid it will be your turn next time. So, saving me now is saving yourselves. Do you understand?" Death was at hand. He was still thinking of threatening others. Looking at Yang Lu's current state, he didn't look like the usual obedient younger brother. Tiger's Mane and the others couldn't help but shake their heads. They knew that their younger brother was hopeless. Even if they worked together to save him this time, they didn't know what kind of mistakes they would make next time. Not to mention, they didn't have the strength to save him now. The mistake that Yang Lu had made was too big. Even if Yang Chendong wanted to save him, it wouldn't be possible. Now, there weren't only a few people in Xianxia. There were also those ministers watching. There were so many officials in those departments watching. There were also so many generals with military power watching. If Yang Lu didn't die, did it mean that others could follow his example in the future? Thinking of this, Tiger's Mane and the others shook their heads. Originally, they wanted to come over and catch up one last time. At least, they wanted to see if Yang Lu had any other wishes that they could help him fulfill. But now, it seemed that there was no need for that. Shaking his head, Tiger's Mane sighed. Then Beta Persei also sighed. They knew that this person was hopeless. At this moment, in the main cabin, Yang Chendong was interrogating Chao Jixiang. From time to time, Chao Jixiang would come up and punch and kick him. The other party was already covered in bruises and teeth all over the ground. Yang Chendong was very angry. He was actually used. If it weren't for his sixth brother, Yang Chendong, who was prepared, the consequences today would be unimaginable. From now on, the Yang family was completely finished, and all of this was obviously because of him. As a result, one could imagine how much he hated Chao Jixiang now. Whenever he was faced with Yang Chendong's questions, he would be severely beaten if he answered even the slightest bit slowly. This caused Chao Jixiang to answer whatever Yang Chendong asked without the slightest delay or hesitation. Chapter 1658. According to Chao Jixiang, Zhu Qizhen felt that Yang Chendong was the biggest threat and wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. Including the previous 3 provinces' king, Zhu Huihua, who used troops against Yang Chendong, it was actually the result of Zhu Qizhen's connivance. Left with no choice, after Chao Jixiang accepted the mission, he thought of ways to rope in Yang Lu, using Yang Ying, who was arranged to be by his side to help him fall step by step. After making a mistake in the first city, he was transferred to the southern Ming dynasty. It didn't take long for him to get in touch with Chao Jixiang and began to plan and look for opportunities. Relying on his identity as Yang Chendong's servant, Yang Lu wantonly raked in money during his time in the southern Ming dynasty. The businessman named Yuan Qian was his spokesperson. With his relationship with Yang Lu, most of the goods transported from Kaisan City to the southern Ming dynasty were sold by him. With money in his hands, the next thing was easy to do. Yang Lu funded Zhu Huihua and asked him to find trouble with Yang Chendong. He also tricked the other party into entering the southern Yun mansion. It was a pity that this Zhu Huihua was ambitious but incompetent. Yang Chendong escaped and was caught instead. As a last resort, Yang Lu used his identity to find the training place of the ninjas in the northern village and rescued them. He gave them money to maintain their training and promised that as long as Yang Chendong was killed, they would be allowed to stand on their own. It was equivalent to finding a big helper. Seeing that Yang Lu was working so hard, Chao Jixiang didn't stay idle. He spent a lot of effort to find General Kuroda, who had escaped from the Japanese Navy, and asked him to lead the army to kill Yang Chendong. However, he never thought that everything was within Yang Chendong's expectations. In the end, Chao Jixiang failed and became a captive in the hands of others. Now, he only regretted being enemies with Yang Chendong. He even knelt at the feet of Yang Chendong and said that he was willing to recognize him as his master and return to the southern Ming dynasty to help Yang Xie deal with the southern Ming dynasty. For someone like Chao Jixiang, it was no different to call him a dog. It would recognize whoever fed it as its master. Yang Chendong, who was at the side, was also convinced. He looked at Yang Chendong with an expectant gaze. Obviously, he felt that releasing Chao Jixiang as a spy for Yang Xie would be very beneficial for dealing with the southern Ming Empire. It was a pity that Yang Chendong ignored his hopeful gaze. Instead, he turned to Ba Daojiang and said, "Take him away and continue interrogating him. Make him spit out everything he knows. If you discover any southern Ming spies hiding in Yang Xie, record them all." Understood, Ba Daojiang hurriedly replied and was about to carry the kneeling Chao Jixiang out. Unexpectedly, Yang Chendong added, "The interrogation can be more intense as long as he doesn't die. If he really dies, then so be it. Just don't let him play any tricks." This time, Ba Daojiang was considered to have received an imperial sword. Naturally, he knew what to do. He had long heard that the Langya Special Forces were very good at interrogating people. This time, he would be able to learn and observe properly. After Ba Daojiang left, Yang Yang, who was left behind, was puzzled. "Fourth brother, why don't you let Chao Jixiang work for us? He's an ingrate. This kind of person is born with the rebellious nature. It's impossible to trust him." "All right, fourth brother, you must be tired. Go to the side cabin and rest for a while." Yang Chendong interrupted his fourth brother. In history, Chao Jixiang was a rebellious person. When he was under Zhu Qiyu, he wanted to save Zhu Qizhen from the Ying sect. In the end, he did it and rose to a high position. However, in the end he still rebelled against Zhu Qizhen and was killed. Knowing that he was such a person, he still used him. Wouldn't that mean that he had to be on guard all the time? How tiring would that be? Not to mention, Yang Chendong had already arranged for Mao Mu to stay in the southern Ming palace. This person had been hibernating all these years. It wasn't that he didn't have the ability. It was just that he didn't want to show off. Now that Chao Jixiang was no longer around, the eunuch group would probably have to be reshuffled. At this time, as long as Mao Mu was given a sum of money, this person might be able to play an important role. Since that was the case, what was the use of keeping a despicable person like Chao Jixiang? Yang Chendong didn't know about this. He only knew that his suggestion wasn't accepted. In addition, this time, he trusted the despicable person so easily that something almost happened to Yang Chendong. With this, if it was someone else, even if they didn't die, they would be half dead. However, he was Yang Chendong's fourth brother. Naturally, he wouldn't do anything to him. However, it could also be seen that his ability was only so. He wouldn't be able to do anything big. Forget it. Since he had seen through his ability, he didn't need to care about anything in the future. He could just be a rich man with peace of mind. Relying on the fact that he was Yang Chendong's fourth brother, as long as he didn't care about politics, then in the future wouldn't he be able to eat and drink well, living a carefree life? Yang Chendong had thought it through, so he strode out. It could be imagined that this person would retire from politics from now on. As soon as Yang Chendong left, Wang Shan came over to report the results of the naval battle. Under the early preparation of Commander Nie Tong, under the attack of the powerful artillery, 50,000 Japanese Empire's naval forces were completely annihilated. At this point, another problem was completely solved. Now, Commander Nie Tong had brought the fleet close to Yang Chendong. Tell Nie Tong that he did a good job. Yang Chendong nodded. For this battle, he already knew that whether it was the power of the artillery or the attack range, it was several times the opponent's. If this battle couldn't be won, then there was no need for Nie Tong to be the commander of the navy. He should just go home and take care of his children. While the two were talking, outside the main cabin, the voices of the 5 Tigers' main brothers came out. They wanted to see Yang Chendong. Wang Shan, you go out first. If there is any urgent situation in the radio station, inform this young master at any time. Yang Chendong knew that he had to face it sooner or later. Considering the face of Tiger's Mane and the others, Yang Chendong decided to face them alone. Yes. Wang Shan agreed, but he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he asked with a little worry, "Young master, do you need to call Captain Tai Hu and the others to wait outside the cabin?" Obviously, Wang Shan was worried about Yang Chendong. He was afraid that something would happen in the meeting. No, they're all on the same side. Yang Chendong shook his head. Yang Lu's matter was an exception. He didn't believe that Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei would do anything to harm him. If that was the case, he would be a failure as a person. Wang Shan was just reminding him. If he said anything more, he would have the time to sow discord. He nodded and walked out with the radio. Then, Tiger's Mane and the others entered the main cabin and knelt in front of Yang Chendong without any explanation. Looking at Tiger's Mane and the others' uniform movements, Yang Chendong didn't say anything and just looked at them quietly. For many years, Tiger's Mane and the others didn't need to kneel when they saw Yang Chendong. Sometimes they saluted, and sometimes they nodded as a subordinate's etiquette. Normally, even if they knelt, Yang Chendong would ask them to get up immediately. But this time, the 6th young master didn't say anything. The quieter he was, the more pressure it brought to them. After a while, Tiger's Mane and the others, who didn't do anything wrong, couldn't help but have cold sweat dripping down their necks. In this regard, Yang Chendong didn't say anything as if he didn't hear anything. The room was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. However, this wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that outside the main cabin was also quiet. Badao Jiang, Tiger's Mane, and the others had already removed all their defenses. The nearest black cavalry was also standing 20 meters away, making it even quieter. If it weren't for the waves hitting the ship, it would give people the impression that there was no one here. The silence continued. A quarter of an hour passed, half an hour passed, about 2 hours passed. Seeing that Tiger's Mane and the others' clothes were drenched in cold sweat, and even Yang Si, who had the worst physical fitness, was a little unsteady, Yang Chendong finally said, "If you have something to say, stand up and say it." Yang Chendong asked them to stand, so they had no choice but to stand. Tiger's Mane and the others hurriedly helped each other to stand up. Then they quickly straightened their bodies, but their heads were still lowered. Looking at Tiger's Mane and the others, Yang Chendong couldn't help but sigh and say, "Speak, speak your mind." If you want to plead for mercy for Yang Lu, you can speak now. No, we won't plead for mercy. Yang Lu deserved to die. Tiger's mane and the others spoke in unison. At this moment, no one dared to plead for mercy for Yang Lu. If they really did that, wouldn't they be disrespecting Yang Chendong? If that was the case, then they wouldn't be far from death. No one pleaded for mercy for Yang Lu, which was within Yang Chendong's expectations. The reason why he arranged for these people to come to the sea in advance was not to let them plead for mercy, but to let the brothers see each other one last time. It could be considered that he had done his last duty as brothers on behalf of Tiger's mane, Beta Persei, and the others. Of course, there was also a serious intention behind it. As Yang Xie's influence continued to expand, it became very difficult to threaten Yang Chendong. But this didn't mean that it was impossible. For example, if a few of the family servants really joined forces, they could still threaten him. If they really did that, due to their status as the Yang family servants, even if they mobilized their troops, no one would immediately say anything. Then a disaster might form. This was definitely something that Yang Chendong didn't want to see. After following him for so many years, it was a little unrealistic for Yang Chendong to abandon them. He still needed to use them, so he could only use them. Now, it seemed that the effect was quite good. Well, young master knows your loyalty. Yang Lu is different from you. Some people are always insatiable. For such a person, even if you give him a mountain of silver, it won't be enough to satisfy his desires. He will definitely rebel. But fortunately, you are all kind-hearted people and won't do such a thing. This young master is very clear on this point. You just need to take this as a warning and do what you should do in the future. Chapter 1659. Hearing this, Tiger's mane and the others were touched. Tears flowed down their cheeks as they agreed in unison. But now, there are two things that you need to do. First, interrogate Yang Lu and see if he has done anything else that we don't know about. If there is anything else, you must find out who it is. Don't be soft-hearted. The second thing is to deal with Yang Lu. He must die, but how do you want to deal with his family? Come up with a plan now. Over the years, Tiger's mane and Yang Xie's servants all had their own families. And they all had more than one wife. It was the same for Yang Lu. There were more than 20 recorded wives, and, naturally, there were many children. Yang San had done a count before. Among them, there were 7 males and 9 females. It could be said that they had a lot of children. Yang Lu had to die for what he had done, but what about his children? Kill them all? If it was an incapable ruler, he would definitely do the same. However, Yang Chendong could not do such a thing, but he would not let them off easily. After all, when they grew up and found out that their father was killed by him, it was inevitable that they would have other thoughts. Even if he knew this, how could Yang Chendong allow it to continue? That was why he called Tiger's mane and the others here today to solve this problem. When they heard the problem of Yang Lu's family, their faces were bitter. They all thought that the young master was going to kill them all. Although what Yang Lu had done was indeed enough to kill 9 generations of his family, they were still brothers of Yang Lu. If they were to watch his entire family get killed, they would feel somewhat apologetic. However, at this time, they no longer had the courage and ability to plead with Yang Chendong. It could be said that Yang Lu's matter had nothing to do with them, but was that really the case? If they were not the servants of the Yang family, how could Yang Lu have the ability to set up such a big plan? With Yang Xie's strong supervision methods, how could these things not be discovered? In the end, it was Yang Xie's identity as a servant that played a role. It made people believe that what they did was beneficial to Yang Chendong. That was why no one investigated it. Because of this, Yang Chendong had stripped them of all their privileges and even demoted them to commoners. It wasn't too much. At that time, they were all bound together for good or ill. Unable to open their mouths to say anything, the 5 of them didn't know what to say. For a moment, the main cabin fell into silence. Why aren't you talking? Let's talk. Otherwise, when it's the young master's turn to speak, I'm afraid you'll regret it. Yang Chendong knew what everyone was thinking. Therefore, he directly threatened them. Only in this way could he force them to express their stance. Hearing this, the 5 of them panicked. They could imagine what the consequences would be once Yang Chendong expressed his stance. Therefore, after exchanging glances with each other, Hu Mang was the first to speak up. Young master, logically speaking, what Yang Lu has done is not overboard with his family. But I think his family should not know what he did. After all, we're brothers, so can't you be lenient? With Tiger's man taking the lead, Beta Persei also begged, yes, just leniency. His family can choose to be exiled. Yes, they can even be exiled separately. The further they are exiled, the better. They can go to a place where no one knows them. They can even remove their Han nationality identity. Yang San was afraid that Yang Chendong would not agree, so he added, I agree with the three brothers. We can separate all our family members and send them to a remote place. Yang Si and Yang Wu also expressed their opinions. Basically, they all had the same idea. After the five of them expressed their opinions one after another, they fell silent again. They only looked at Yang Chendong nervously, waiting for the young master's final decision. Yang Chendong did not say anything immediately. Instead, he first looked at the five of them with a scrutinizing gaze. No matter who his gaze fell on, that person quickly lowered their head, as if they had done something wrong and did not dare to look at him. After an unknown amount of time, Yang Chendong finally sighed and said, Forget it. Since you all care so much about your brotherhood, I can't say anything about the young master. I'll allow it. Yang Chendong finally expressed his stance and agreed with the five of them. Tiger's man and the others also breathed a sigh of relief. Then, they kowtowed non-stop to express their gratitude at the moment. But you have to remember that this matter is not over. If any of you have any delusional thoughts in the future, I won't let you off easily. Not only that, I won't spare any of Yang Lu's family members. Also, don't try to play any tricks. The young master will send someone else to supervise you. As for who it is, you don't need to know. If you find out that any of Yang Lu's family members are being taken special care of, then the five of you can just wait to be locked up and never see the light of day again. He still had to give them a warning. Yang Chendong could spare Yang Lu's life on account of his contributions and Tiger's man and the others' pleas. But if these people still wanted to play any tricks, then sorry, he could only bear the pain and take action. We don't dare. At this moment, Tiger's man and the others did not dare to play any tricks. It had to be said that the servants were all good people. Other than Yang Lu's betrayal, the five of them were all loyal and devoted, even until death. Seeing that the beating was almost done, Yang Chendong knew that he had to comfort them. Otherwise, if everyone worked with emotions, then he would be the one at a loss. Then he changed to a peaceful tone and said, If you want to talk about Yang Lu's matter, it's purely his own fault. Now that we've found out that the five of you did not participate, this makes the young master feel very gratified and happy. No matter what, it proves that you're all loyal and trustworthy. Next, I hope that you guys will continue to work hard. In the future, there will be a lot of opportunities for you guys to show off your skills in Xianxia. Take Tiger's man for example. After this, it'll be time for us to deal with the North and South Ming dynasty. For stability, we'll prepare to deal with them one by one. First, we'll start with the South Ming dynasty. Yu Mian is more familiar with the situation here and was once an official of the Great Ming dynasty. He needs to be transferred over. Speaking up to here, Yang Chendong ordered Tiger's man, Yu Mian will be transferred over. You'll be in charge of the matters of the beginning city. Yang Si will also be transferred over to assist Yu Mian. After all, this is the land of the Han. Not only do we have to reclaim this place, but we also have to let the people here live a better life. Yang Si has always been good at logistics. This time, we'll have to continue to work hard. Is there any problem? Go all out? No problem. Tiger's man and Yang Si both replied. Also, Yang San, the intelligence department will have to fully cooperate with the army. This time, the South Ming dynasty sent an observation team to Crimson City. They've gained quite a lot and the people's hearts are fluctuating. However, this will definitely arouse Zhu Qizhen's suspicions. Therefore, it's inevitable that there will be some cleansing and chaos. At that time, you guys will have to do your best to save some useful officials. After all, if we want to manage this huge Xianxia, we still need Han officials. Understood, young master, I promise to complete the mission. Yang Sen also replied respectfully. Yang Chendong nodded, then his gaze landed on Yang Wu and said, the South Ming Dynasty's observation team will come to Crimson City soon. You're already familiar with how to arrange and protect their safety. This time, you have to do a good job of receiving them. Yes, young master, don't worry. Yang Wu immediately expressed. Finally, Yang Chendong looked at Beta Persei and said, you can continue to follow the young master. There are many things that I'm not used to without someone following me. Beta Persei happily replied. Letting him stay by the young master's side was enough to prove that they were still trusted. This also made everyone feel at ease, as they didn't have to carry burdens to work. After having a heart-to-heart talk with Tiger's Mane and the other four, Yang Chendong seemed to be a little tired and waved his hand. Then you can all go and do your own things. Yang Lu's matter must be resolved today. Tiger's Mane and the others already knew this result, but when they heard that Yang Lu was about to die, they still couldn't bear to see it happen. However, they also knew that this was already the best result. At least their families' lives would be saved. This was already Yang Chendong's mercy. They immediately answered in unison, and the five of them left together. The matter of the servants was finally resolved, and the troublesome traitor was also eliminated. Next was to deal with the matter of the South Ming dynasty. At this moment, Yang Chendong's gaze seemed to have crossed the sea and landed on Yingtian Prefecture. He really wanted to know how Zhu Qizhen would react after knowing that Chao Jixiang's mission had failed. South Ming dynasty's capital palace. Zhu Qizhen had been restless since he woke up in the morning. He knew very well that today was the day he would have a showdown with Yang Chendong, and he hoped that Chao Jixiang would succeed. In that case, Yang Chendong would no longer be a threat, and the mountain above the South Ming dynasty would be gone. Not only could he continue to be the emperor of the South Ming dynasty, but he could also find a way to unify the Great Ming dynasty. A while ago, he received news that the Baiming emperor, Zhu Qiyu, had not attended morning court for a while due to health reasons. This was definitely a good opportunity for Zhu Qizhen. He could imagine that without Yang Chendong and Zhu Qiyu as opponents, who else in the world could go against him? Speaking of which, Zhu Qizhen also had some confidence in himself. At least he could be considered a capable emperor. He was able to bend and stand tall, and was good at national affairs. This was what history recorded about him. Just like when he was captured by Yes Hen of Wara, he could use his charisma to make others not dare to offend him, and even worship him like an ancestor. This was the display of a gentleman and an emperor. Chapter 1660. After returning to the country, he was put under house arrest by Zhu Qiyu. Even the eunuchs around him bullied him. In the summer, even the only tree he used to enjoy the shade was cut down. He did not say a word and silently endured it. This was the performance of tolerance. In the end, when Zhu Qiyu was in poor health, he turned the tables and became an emperor twice. Finally, he led the Great Ming dynasty to become strong again. This was his ability to unify the country and become an emperor. Such a person, if it weren't for the appearance of Yang Chendong, he would have become the emperor of the Great Ming dynasty again. One could imagine how difficult it would be to make such a person lower his head and admit defeat. Since he didn't admit defeat, he could only take the initiative to attack. If Chao Jixiang could succeed, it would naturally be the best. But if he couldn't, Zhu Qizhen had to consider the serious consequences. Time passed by little. Slowly, noon passed, and the sky slowly turned dark. There was still no news. Zhu Qizhen's face remained unchanged. He knew that because the communication was not developed, even if Chao Jixiang succeeded now, it was impossible for good news to come so quickly. Let's go to the Empress Palace to take a look. Looking at the sky outside, it was already dark. Zhu Qizhen called senior eunuch Qian, Sengbao, and went straight to the harem. In the Empress Palace, the chief eunuch, Mao Mu, was arranging everything in an orderly manner. He seemed to be no different from usual. But if someone observed carefully, they could still find that his hands were trembling slightly. This was caused by excitement. In the afternoon, Mao Mu went out to buy some silk under the order of the Empress. He was able to meet with the intelligence team that specially contacted him. He learned that Chao Jixiang was captured and that Yang Xie would soon make a move on the southern Ming dynasty. In other words, after enduring for so many years, Mao Mu was finally going to see the light of day. It was really exciting just thinking about it. Speaking of which, Mao Mu was not very ambitious. Especially after being valued by Empress Qian over the years, his life in the palace could be considered pleasant. His mentality was more peaceful. However, it was undeniable that the internal strife within the eunuch group had never stopped. Now, it was only because Yang Xie brought too much pressure to the southern Ming Empire that everyone's attention was focused on her. This caused the internal strife to be less intense than before. In addition, Empress Qian did not fight for fame or wealth. She never interfered in other aspects of the palace. As the chief eunuch, he was almost a decoration. He also did not have any power, so he was not targeted. Just because nothing happened now didn't mean nothing would happen in the future. The imperial palace was a dangerous place to begin with. Sometimes, one wrong word could lead to a death sentence. Not to mention, if Yang Xie really failed, the relationship between Mao Mu and Yang Chendong would be discovered. At that time, Mao Mu would really die without a burial place. Therefore, on the surface, Mao Mu should have been doing something during this period of time, and there was nothing strange about it. But in the dead of the night, he would always spend his time trembling, afraid that he would accidentally be discovered. The next morning his head would be gone. Perhaps this was the mentality of the underground workers. It was really beyond the reach of ordinary people. Fortunately, there was finally a result today. Chao Jixiang was caught and was destined not to be released. Yang Xie was about to make a move, and the situation was gradually becoming clearer. Mao Mu was getting closer and closer to his day of glory. Most importantly, the group that contacted him personally gave him 1 million taels of silver. They even said that they would give him more if it was not enough. As long as Mao Mu took this opportunity to obtain more power and support, he would be able to deal with Yang Xie's army. With a huge pile of banknotes in his arms, Mao Mu felt that his back had become a lot tougher. Eunuchs were like this. The reason why they destroyed their own foundation and became half-human, half-ghost, was not to have a mouth to eat, to earn more money, and to live a better life. In front of such a person, talking about dreams and life was definitely nonsense. It was far more practical than shining silver. Therefore, in the imperial palace, there was a saying that the rich were the masters. Even for a powerful supervisor like Chao Jixiang, wasn't his ultimate goal just to get more money? Mao Mu had what they wanted the most. Thus, he did not have to worry about people not working hard for him and not being loyal to him. Just as he was thinking about how to use the silver to rope in more people, a eunuch suddenly shouted from outside, "The emperor has fallen." When Mao Mu instinctively knelt on the ground, he knew that the opportunity had come. The opportunity for him to be on good terms with Qian Sengbao had appeared. The three most powerful people in the eunuch group were the head eunuch, Qian Sengbao, followed by Chao Jixiang, the head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate, and the head eunuch, Kai Zhong. These three people, especially the previous two, were very powerful. Moreover, both sides were equally powerful. It was impossible to tell who was stronger and who was weaker. At that time, Mao Mu did not have any intention to participate in order to protect himself. Now that he knew about Chao Jixiang's capture, and only he knew about it, it was time to gamble. Therefore, when Zhu Qizhen entered Empress Qian's bedroom, Mao Mu changed his attitude and tried to establish a relationship with Qian Sengbao, who was waiting outside. Qian Sengbao's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. After seeing the amount on the banknote, he immediately put it into his sleeve. Then, he looked around and ordered the servants to serve him carefully. Then he followed Mao Mu to the side hall. After there was no one else, Qian Sengbao no longer had that high and mighty appearance. Instead, he changed his attitude and asked Mao Mu with a smile, "Eunuch Mao, you are so generous. What do you need this eunuch to do?" They were both eunuchs, so there was no need to hide many things. Mao Mu said respectfully, "Eunuch Qian, to be honest, this is this little one's life savings. Now, I am giving it all to Eunuch Qian to show my respect." I am willing to follow eunuch Qian's lead. Hearing that Mao Mu was willing to rely on him, Qian Sengbao was very happy. After all, he was the head eunuch of the empress and had some power. Therefore, he was very proud and said politely, "Eunuch Mao is too polite. Since it is like this, we will be a family in the future. We will advance and retreat together." "Yes, thank you Eunuch Qian for thinking so highly of me. This little one will work hard to keep up with Eunuch Qian's footsteps." Mao Mu seemed to be excited as he spoke with a fawning expression. Qian Sengbao's face flushed when he heard these words. He kept saying good, good, good. He believed that with Mao Mu's loyalty, he would have a higher chance of success when dealing with Chao Jixiang. At the crucial moment, he could have Mao Mu say some bad things about Chao Jixiang to Empress Qian. In addition, he could speak in front of the emperor. Then, there was no need to worry about Chao Jixiang not falling. Qian Sengbao's good mood fell into Mao Mu's eyes. He knew that there were some things he could say. He immediately mentioned that he was only the head eunuch of the empress and had limited power. Therefore, he wanted to join the embroidered uniform guard and become a deputy director. If it was before, even if someone made such an arrangement, Mao Mu would not do it. The embroidered uniform guard was Chao Jixiang's territory. Without the other party's permission, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? It was even possible that he would lose his life if he did not do it well. However, it was different now. He knew that Chao Jixiang would not return. If he did not make a move now, then when? When Qian Sengbao heard Mao Mu's request, he was shocked. He already knew that Mao Mu was not an ordinary eunuch. Otherwise, he would not have won the emperor's trust. Even the emperor had said more than once that Mao Mu was a good person. It was because he knew that Mao Mu could not endure it forever that it was normal for the other to make a request. He also felt at ease accepting the other's money. However, the other wanted to join the embroidered uniform guard. This really surprised him. As for the embroidered uniform guard, even if Qian Sengbao was the head eunuch, his power was not enough. In particular, Chao Jixiang had many tricks up his sleeve. Chapter 1661. At this moment, Mao Mu's words were filled with righteousness, causing Qian Sengbao's heart to surge. Indeed, Chao Jixiang was becoming more and more powerful, especially recently. Whenever he saw the emperor, even Qian Sengbao had to avoid him. This was not a good sign. If Qian Sengbao continued to develop, who knew if Qian Sengbao would replace him one day? If that was the case, then he would be completely finished. As a eunuch, he knew very well that if he continued to be an ordinary eunuch, perhaps no one would do anything to him. However, once he fell from a high position, it was impossible to even ask for a complete corpse. Of course, eunuchs were not complete people, let alone complete corpses. Cough cough. Qian Sengbao, who had been thinking about how to break out of this situation, did not expect Mao Mu to jump out. Although the two of them were not very close, the key was that Qian Sengbao's rank was high enough. He did not need to do much about this matter. He only needed to report it to the emperor and record it in the records. With the face of the 50,000 taels of silver and the ability to make Chao Jixiang unhappy, why would he be happy to do such a thing? The more he thought about it, the more advantageous it was for him. Looking at Mao Mu's expectant expression, Qian Sengbao finally made a decision. All right, I'll mention this matter to the emperor tomorrow morning. Eunuch Mao, don't worry. Thank you for your guidance, Eunuch Qian. Mao Mu bowed like a subordinate. This made Qian Sengbao even more satisfied. The matter went very smoothly. Zhu Qizhen, who had rested at the empress's place for the night, woke up glowing in the morning. Using this opportunity, Qian Sengbao proposed to let eunuch Mao Mu take on the position of vice supervisor of the embroidered uniform guard. This is something that you, the head eunuch, should worry about. Just do what you think is feasible. Zhu Qizhen said casually. It was true that he relied on Chao Jixiang, but he had to be careful. Arranging a vice supervisor for them was a good way to keep them in check. Especially this time, when Chao Jixiang had made a great contribution, it was even more important to keep them in check. He knew Mao Mu was very obedient. Empress Qian had praised him more than once. Moreover, he was an old man who had followed them from Baiming's capital, so he was most likely loyal. It had to be said that Zhu Qizhen's manipulation of power was quite good. Moreover, he had always had a good impression of eunuchs. Now that Qian Sengbao had taken the initiative to suggest it, he agreed. Thus, Mao Mu took up the post. Xianxia had already begun to transport all sorts of war resources from Crimson City to Laizhou Prefecture of Guangdong Province. The war was in the midst of preparations, and it seemed like it would erupt at any moment. Mao Mu's actions had to be faster. After receiving the appointment decree from Monk Qian Bao, Mao Mu went to the embroidered uniform guard to take up his post. Mao Mu took the imperial edict to the embroidered uniform guard. All the important figures in the family, as well as some Qianhu and Vice-Qianhu, came out to greet the imperial edict. But when they found out that Mao Mu was going to be the deputy factory manager, the faces of the people who came to welcome them immediately fell. The entire welcome hall was quickly emptied, leaving only a deputy Qianhu named Wu Ben standing there. Mao Mu was not surprised that everyone had left because he already knew the current power structure of the embroidered uniform guard. The embroidered uniform guard commander Chao Jing, Chao Jixiang's younger brother, was primary third rank. Commander Chao Yan, Chao Jixiang's nephew, was secondary third rank. Commander Chao Xian, Chao Jixiang's adopted son, was primary fourth rank. Commander Wen Jing, Chao Jixiang's trusted aide, was primary fourth rank. Guardian Chao Duo, Chao Jixiang's adopted son, was secondary fourth rank. Guardian Su Hui, Chao Jixiang's trusted aide, was secondary fourth rank, etc. All of these people had a very close relationship with Chao Jixiang. Mao Mu had already understood the situation before he came here. He didn't expect these people to have a better attitude towards him. However, there was still one person who had not left. This was outside of his expectations. Although it was only a deputy Qianhu, it was still very pleasing. "You are Wu Ben?" Mao Mu smiled as he looked at the only person who had not left and sat down on the main seat. Wu Ben noticed that Mao Mu was sitting on the main seat. That was the seat that only Chao Jixiang could sit on in the past. Even when Chao Jixiang was not present, his younger brother, the current commander Chao Jing, did not dare to sit there. But now, Mao Mu sat on that seat naturally. Needless to say, his ambition was obvious. Seeing this scene, Wu Ben was even more determined to join Chao Jixiang. It was not for anything else, but because he had unintentionally offended Qianhu Chao Duo. This was Chao Jixiang's adopted son. Now, he was just waiting for Chao Jixiang to come back and deal with him. He had no other choice but to turn to any doctor in his desperation. Mao Mu was his life's hope. Other than relying on him, he had no other choice but to treat a dead horse as a living horse. So when Mao Mu asked, he did not stand and simply knelt on the ground. "This little one is Deputy Qianhu Wu Ben. In the future, I am willing to serve Lord Mao." How could Mao Mu not know what he was thinking when he knelt in front of him? There was no need to guess the process. Presumably, he had offended someone in the Chao family, so he had to do this. Wasn't this what he wanted? Previously, he had been worried that there was no one by his side that he could use and needed to be promoted. Now that Wu Ben had taken the initiative to join him, it was a pleasant surprise. He had already decided to accept the other party, but before that, he still needed to understand the situation clearly. At least, he had to know what was going on. "Speak, who did you offend? Don't worry, just speak frankly. If there are any lies, I can't help you." Mao Mu's bluntness made Wu Ben see hope. In any case, there was no other way. Since Mao Mu was his only chance, he told Chao Jixiang about his dispute with Chao Duo. Speaking of which, it was just for a woman. Here, the embroidered uniform guard was not completely the same as eunuchs. Apart from the embroidered uniform guard's Qianhu master being a eunuch, there was no rule that stipulated that the officials below had to be eunuchs. So many people were still able-bodied men. Wu Ben was one of them. Not only that, he also had a family and a woman called Xiao Chui. Unexpectedly, because of Xiao Chui's beauty, she actually attracted Chao Duo's attention, and then he wanted to snatch her away. Just like that, a very melodramatic thing happened. As a man, Wu Ben naturally wouldn't agree. He also relied on his identity as a vice Qianhu to beg for some face in front of Chao Duo. Unexpectedly, it didn't work at all and he even offended the other party. Qiao Duo threatened that when his adoptive father, Qiao Jixiang, returned, he would snatch Xiao Chui to his residence and teach him a lesson. The so-called lesson was naturally to teach him a lesson. For the embroidered uniform guard, there weren't too many reasons to teach someone a lesson. From then on, Wu Ben lived in the shadows. For 3 consecutive days, he even thought of committing suicide. But when he thought that even if he died, he wouldn't be able to solve Xiao Chui's problem, he could only give up on the idea. He originally thought that there wouldn't be any way to break out of this situation. At this time, Mao Mu appeared. Of course, he would be held in his hands like a life-saving straw. One wanted to accept people, and the other wanted to seek refuge. This was 2 good things, 1 good thing. Immediately, Mao Mu helped Wu Ben up with a courteous appearance and asked about the other party's situation. Wu Ben's ancestral home was Jinhua, Zhejiang. His ancestors had once opened an escort agency. Since young, he had learned extraordinary martial arts. Later on, his family declined and he joined the embroidered uniform guard. He had been a small banner, a general, a baihu, and the current vice jianhu. But if he wanted to continue to be promoted and become one of the 14 qianhu, it would be even more difficult. That required Qiao Jixiang's approval. Unfortunately, he had no connections and no money to show filial piety. Now that he had offended Qiao Duo, it would be difficult for him to keep his life, let alone be promoted. The embroidered uniform guard was an organization that was above the law. When they killed people, they didn't need any reason at all. As the vice jinhu of the embroidered uniform guard, Wu Ben knew this better than outsiders. Hearing Wu Ben say this, Mao Mu was very satisfied. He couldn't help but ask, "Oh, so your martial arts are not bad. But compared to the other qianhu, who is stronger and who is weaker?" At this moment, Wu Ben, who saw Mao Mu as his savior, didn't dare to boast. But on this matter, he couldn't help but express his opinion. The so-called qianhu are only people that Qiao Jixiang trusts or people who give him large amounts of money. In terms of ability, there aren't many who know martial arts. In terms of fighting, they are completely not his opponent. As if afraid that Mao Mu wouldn't believe him, Wu Ben said, "In reality, the people who really do things in the embroidered uniform guard are not commanders, or qianhu. Basically, they are all people below the vice jinhu rank, especially the general and small banners." Mao Mu also knew this. In the embroidered uniform guard, the small banners were in charge of 10 people, the general banners were in charge of 5 small banners, the baihu were in charge of 2 general banners, and the qianhu were in charge of 10 baihu. According to the Ming dynasty, the embroidered uniform guard was an independent guard office with a total of 5,600 people. A qianhu had 1,120 people and a baihu had 112 people. This was the standard. But in reality, the number of people depended on the embroidered uniform guard's ability. In the mid to late Ming dynasty, because there was no upper limit to the number of people in the embroidered uniform guard, the total number of people increased to around 60,000 to 100,000. The current embroidered uniform guard, under Qiao Jixiang's leadership, had developed in a somewhat abnormal direction. The number of people had long since exceeded 10,000, which was more than twice the number set by the court. This gave Mao Mu more space to show off. If there were fewer people, it would be difficult to do anything big. Wu Ben's explanation gave Mao Mu a better understanding of the current embroidered uniform guard. He had already decided to accept Wu Ben as a person. First of all, this was the first person to rely on him, and it had to have a publicity effect. Second of all, this person was indeed a talent. In addition, he had already offended the Qiao family, so he could use him without worry. But just relying on this person was definitely not enough. Mao Mu already had an idea, so he had Wu Ben follow him to the embroidered uniform guard's discipline prison. He wanted to go there to find someone useful. Chapter 1662. The so-called discipline prison of the embroidered uniform guard was the prison of the embroidered uniform guard. Most of the people locked up there were important criminals of the embroidered uniform guard and some embroidered uniform guards who had made mistakes. The most reliable people were naturally the criminals of the embroidered uniform guard who had been dealt with by the Qiao family. If they were of one mind, they would not have been caught here. It had to be said that Mao Mu's train of thought was very correct. When he took the vice director's token and arrived at the discipline prison without any obstructions, as expected, he saw many brothers of the embroidered uniform guard who were imprisoned here because of their various mistakes. Some of these people had really made mistakes, especially those who had violated the embroidered uniform guard's own rules and were locked up here. For example, they had bullied the good, oppressed the officials, corrupted, and so on. However, there were also some who were not wrong. They were just thrown here because they had offended the Chao family. Most of these people were capable and opinionated. Chao Jixiang had no intention of beating these people to death with a stick. He told them to find their families to ransom them. If they did not have any money, then they could only wait to be tortured to death. These people were the people Mao Mu was looking for. Shen Nantang, a local of Nanjing, was originally 100 households. However, because he was soft-hearted and let go of the 2-year-old granddaughter of a criminal, he was caught here and punished according to the family's internal rules. The ransom was 200 taels. Speaking of this, it had to be said that Zhu Yuanzhang had set a set of salary standards in the 25th year of Hongwu. He had also stipulated that the salary would not change for the next 200 years of the Ming dynasty. In other words, no matter how much the price of goods outside increased, the salary would still be the same. The officials of the Great Ming dynasty were a bit better. They basically had some gray income. However, the people below them were sad. For example, 100 households like Shin Nantang only had a salary of 5 taels a month. This was because he had an official position, which was at least a 6th-rank official. Moreover, the ransom of 200 taels was equivalent to him not eating or drinking for 3 years. How could he possibly have the money to do so? He could only be locked up here. One could even imagine that if it wasn't for Mao Mu's appearance, he would probably never have appeared until one day, when he died in it. Since Mao Mu had appeared, Shenantang could naturally be saved. According to Wu Ben's explanation, this person's martial arts were not ordinary. He was also very famous in the entire embroidered uniform guards. He was even one of the top 5. If not for that, he would have been killed a long time ago for releasing the daughter of a serious criminal. Chao Jixiang was also a person who valued talent, which was why he wanted the ransom. Mao Mu naturally had to extend a helping hand to such a person. She had a conscience, and she had been played so badly by Chao Jixiang. If he didn't save her, who would? It was only 200 taels of silver. He took it out without any hesitation. Then he named a few more people and recorded their ransom. Then, he asked Wu Ben to handle the procedures for them. Mao Mu wanted the prisoners and paid the ransom according to the rules, so the brocade guard official in charge of the discipline prison could only release the prisoners. In this way, a team was quickly formed. Besides Wu Ben, Mao Mu also had Shenantang, Luo Zhu, and a series of capable generals. After leaving the discipline prison, Mao Mu did not let them go home immediately. Instead, he first took them to an enormous restaurant in the Yingtian prefecture. First, he washed everyone, then gave each of them 100 taels of silver as a meeting gift. This was still not shocking. What was even more shocking was that Mao Mu proposed in front of everyone that he would make adjustments within the embroidered uniform guards. Wu Ben and Shenantang would become the new Chenhu. Luo Zhu and the others would also become Baihu or Test Baihu. Not only did he give out money, but he also conferred official positions. Immediately, everyone expressed their gratitude. They were all people who had been pushed aside. They had the ability, but other than that, they had no money and no backing. They had never thought that one day they would have a meteoric rise. Mao Mu's arrival made many of their wishes come true. In the time it took to eat a meal, he became the true master in everyone's eyes. Seeing everyone's urgent gaze on him, Mao Mu naturally felt a sense of heroism from the bottom of his heart. Although he was no longer a healthy man, he had his own dreams and his own idols. For example, his goal was the 3 treasures eunuch, Zhenghe. That was definitely a legendary existence among the eunuchs. If he wanted to be like Zheng he had to fulfill 2 conditions. First, he had to obtain the emperor's trust. Right now, he had obtained Yang Chendong's deep trust, so he had fulfilled this condition. Second, he had to have the ability. If he could grasp the power of the embroidered uniform guards in his hands, wouldn't that prove it? Mao Mu, who had his own ideals, fully displayed the smooth side of a eunuch at the table. And everyone was excited because they had a new backing and a new goal. Everyone was a frustrated person. Most of them had even been waiting for death in the prison. Now they could eat and drink here. Moreover, they had been told that a career and wealth were right in front of them. How could they not be excited? Even if Mao Mu wanted them to deal with the Chao family, no one would have any objections. Mao Mu cleverly did not give any orders to them, nor did he say that his backing was Yang Chendong. Everyone still had doubts about his ability and whether he could help them get promoted and seize power. He needed to settle the matter of the officials first. After eating and drinking to their fill, everyone left with a satisfied expression and returned to their homes. Now that they had money, they should buy some things for their homes and make some changes. Mao Mu also returned to the palace. He first went to the Empress place to take a roll call. Seeing that there was nothing for him to do, he directly went to find Qian Sengbao. Ever since he received the 50,000 taels of silver from Mao Mu, the relationship between the two had become much closer. When he heard that Mao Mu wanted to see him, he naturally opened the door to welcome him. As expected, this time he still sent money. Although it was not much, 15,000 taels of silver still made Qian Sengbao beam with joy. Qian Sengbao, the 10,000 taels of silver were given by Wu Ben and Shenante. One of them is a vice Qianhu, the other is a baihu. They have enough qualifications. When they saw me, they asked if they could spend money to get promoted. I thought about it and thought that all the benefits could not be taken by Chao Jixiang, so I made the decision to agree for Qian Sengbao. There are also a few more, but they are all for Baihu and Zongqi. They are all very low-ranking officials. What do you think? Qian Sengbao had already taken the banknotes. He asked curiously, "Are all the servants of the embroidered uniform guards so rich?" I didn't know before. It can be seen how much money Chao Jixiang has pocketed. That's right, there are some officials below who also want to work for Qian Sengbao. They all waved banknotes to me, but I don't know if there will be such a thing in the future. When Mao Mu saw Qian Sengbao put away the banknotes, he knew that the matter of the two Qianhu had been settled. However, if he wanted to control the entire embroidered uniform guard, these two Qianhu were far from enough. Therefore, for the sake of a long term, he asked tentatively, "There are still people who want to buy officials?" At this moment, Qian Sengbao's face also turned red. He suddenly realized that this was a good way to accumulate wealth. He thought that he was smart, but he was actually so stupid. He did not know that the embroidered uniform guard had such a big profit. It seemed that he was still a little short-sighted. In the past, when he saw that the emperor would let the embroidered uniform guard do something difficult, he thought that it was a hot potato. Now, it seemed that he was wrong. That's right. Not only do they want to buy Qianhu, if possible, they are also willing to pay money to buy the position of town supervisor, or even the position of advisor and advisor. As Mao Mu spoke, he carefully observed the changes in Qian Sengbao's expression. Do they have that much silver? Qian Sengbao asked with even more surprise. Yes, this servant has asked. If Duke Qian agrees, a town supervisor will be 20,000 taels of silver, an advisor will be 50,000 taels of silver, and an advisor will be 100,000 taels of silver. Of course, a commander will be a little higher, 500,000 taels of silver. Mao Mu was still talking, but when Qian Sengbao heard 500,000 taels of silver, his eyes were already wide open. One had to know that after being the head eunuch for so many years, he had only saved 200,000 to 300,000 taels of silver. There was nothing he could do about it. With his position, there were too many people looking at him. If he wanted them to listen to him, he would have to give them some benefits. In the past year, just the benefits he gave to the servants were already a huge expense. In a year, he would only get 20,000 to 30,000 taels of silver. Sometimes, when the emperor had some festive occasion, he would even have to send gifts. Once he received tens of thousands of taels of silver, after working hard for a year, he would spend all the gifts in one go. Now, Mao Mu had found a way for him to make money. He did a rough calculation. If he sold all these positions, he would probably get close to 1,000,000 taels of silver. This was something he never dared to think about. Just as Qian Sengbao was calculating in his heart, Mao Mu spoke again. Duke Qian, this servant has thought about it. We can repeatedly earn this money. For example, whoever buys an advisor position will have to pay 100,000 taels of silver. After taking the position, they will have to pay 10,000 taels of silver every month. For example, the advisor position is 50,000 taels of silver, so they have to pay 5,000 taels of silver every month. As for the commander's 500,000 taels, he would have to pay 50,000 taels a month. If they can continue to pay, they can continue to be officials. If they can't pay, they will owe at most a month before being removed from their position. In this way, we can earn a large amount of money every month. But doesn't this mean that we will get close to 100,000 taels of silver every month? Qian Sengbao was really frightened. What was the difference between this and robbery? But would these people agree? Would they be able to earn so much money every month? Seeing Qian Sengbao's shocked expression, Mao Mu felt disdain in her heart. It was only a small amount of money and he was already frightened. One had to know that Yang Chendong gave out 1,000,000 taels of silver every time. If it wasn't enough, he could ask for more. How bold was that? Moreover, this money was not a loss because once the Southern Ming Empire was annexed, this money would eventually return to Yang Xie's pocket. Right now, it was just temporarily placed here. Chapter 1663. Naturally, these thoughts would not be spoken out loud. Mao Mu continued, this servant has also asked about this. They also said that as long as they are given power, they will think of a way to get the money. For example, there are so many corrupt officials in our court, and so many people who do business with Yang Xia in private. Those are all very profitable businesses. As long as they are dealt with, the money will be sent to you every month. There won't be any problems. Qian Sengbao was afraid that these people would act recklessly after gaining power. Once they made the emperor unhappy, it would be a big matter. Now that he heard that it was actually against the corrupt officials and the merchants who did business with Yang Xi, he felt a lot more relieved. Good, that's good. Seeing that Qian Sengbao had agreed, Mao Mu struck while the iron was hot. Since that's the case, does Qian need to meet them? I'll leave everything to eunuch Mao. This duke is relieved. Qian Sengbao thought about it and decided not to meet them. This way, if something were to happen, he could still shirk responsibility, but if he met them, some things were really hard to explain. This was also what Mao Mu wanted. Since that's the case, this servant will wait. I'm sure that after receiving the money, these people will thank Qian Sengbao. By the way, what rank can this official be sold to? There's no rush. Let's deal with the two Qianhu first and see their reaction. Qian Sengbao didn't know that something had happened to Cao Jixiang. He was still worried that this person would come back and cause trouble. If it was only two Qianhu, he could withstand this pressure. That's good. Mao Mu knew what Qian Sengbao was worried about. However, there were some things that he couldn't say out loud, so he temporarily agreed. But he knew that with this start, the rest of the matter would be easy to handle. He followed Qian Sengbao to draft the internal affairs report. For example, Qian Sengbao could basically appoint officials. This was one of his powers as the head eunuch. After receiving the internal affairs report written by Qian Sengbao, Mao Mu left the palace and went to the embroidered uniform guard factory. Shen Nantang and the others first took the silver back home to comfort their families. Then they came to the embroidered uniform guard factory and waited for news. After all, it was Mao Mu's words before. Whether they would be promoted or not was not certain. If this chief eunuch who served the empress was all talk and no action, then they would have to suffer. It was no wonder that everyone had such thoughts. Shen Nantang and the others didn't do anything wrong, but offending the Chao family was the biggest crime. In addition, over the years, Empress Qian's strength had not been obvious. She was basically an invisible person. No one knew what kind of power the head eunuch who served her had. Not long after, Mao Mu appeared. Seeing everyone standing here waiting for him, how could he not know what they were thinking? After chuckling, he took out the internal affairs reports written by the head eunuch, Qian Sanbao, and handed them to Shen Nantang and the others one by one according to their names. Sure enough, it was a decree of promotion. Seeing that they were still prisoners a few hours ago, but in the blink of an eye, they had become Qianhu, Baihu, Zongqi, and other officials with ranks, everyone was naturally excited. When they looked at Mao Mu, there was no longer any contempt in their eyes. Instead, they were burning with passion. At this time, Mao Mu put away the smile on his face and became very serious. This Gonggong has given you what this Gonggong promised. Next, it will depend on everyone's performance. Next, I will announce the mission. Shen Nantang, Wu Ben, Luo Zhu, and the others immediately straightened their bodies. They were like an army that was about to be inspected. There are 3 main missions. First, unite those who have been oppressed by the Chao family but have the ability. Of course, those who have the ability but are depressed can also be roped in. They can be allocated according to their ability. Those who have the ability to become Qianhu can become Qianhu. But remember, don't accept those who don't have the ability. If anyone wants to make up the numbers and is caught by this Gonggong, then whoever recommended them will also be guilty. They will also be abandoned by this Gonggong. Do you understand? This was something he had learned from Yang Chendong. Although Mao Mu had not done much work, the intelligence team that contacted him would often inform him of Yang Xie's actions and methods. From Mao Mu's point of view, the recommendation was the right thing to do. In this way, it could prevent the incompetent from being promoted to the position to the greatest extent. It was unlike the Great Ming Dynasty, where as long as one had connections and even gave money, one could become an official. Even if there was a problem in the future, it would be a scam to just say that they had made a mistake. Reporting to Gonggong Mao, we understand. Shen Nantang and the others immediately replied loudly. As people who had been oppressed, they had many brothers around them. Previously, they were worried that their strength was too limited. Now that they could expand their team, things would be easier. After finishing the first mission, Mao Mu began to talk about the second. The second mission is to keep an eye on the Chao family and find evidence that they are criminals. When the time is right, strike hard. Only then will you be able to truly stand out. In fact, there was no need for Mao Mu to say this. Shen Nantang and the others would do it. After all, they had suffered so much because of the other party. Now that they had a chance to make up for it, how could they be polite? Struggles had always been like this. It was either you die or I live. History had also proven that soft-hearted people could not achieve great things. Alright, let's talk about the third mission. In summary, there is only one word: obedience. Mao Mu's voice unconsciously became louder as he continued, "What I want is obedience. As long as it is an order from me, you must unconditionally carry it out. On the contrary, as for other people's orders, you must not oppose them. The specific matters are up to you." This eunuch also wants to say that Qianhu is not the end of your career. As long as you have outstanding ability and make outstanding contributions, you can be promoted to the position of town protector, commander Qianshi, comrade, or even commander. After saying this, Shen Nantang and the others' eyes immediately widened. Commander! Although it was only a third-rank official position, the real power it held was something that even second-rank officials could not compare to. In the past, a fourth-rank official was an existence that they admired for life. They did not expect that they would have the opportunity to sit in that position. There was nothing to say. Next, they would strive for this goal until the end. As for the obedience that Mao Mu mentioned, no one had any resistance. Although the establishment of the embroidered uniform guard was more to serve the imperial power, in the end, they still had to obey someone. Mao Mu had freed them from the abyss of suffering and was one of the chief eunuchs of the palace. So if they obeyed Mao Mu, wouldn't that be the same as obeying the imperial power? As for what Mao Mu said, if there were other people's orders, no one should oppose them. That was just doing a superficial job of respect. The embroidered uniform guard was very good at this. So there was no need to teach them. Everyone knew what to do. After the 3 orders were announced, everyone began to get busy. Recruiting people and finding evidence was the focus of their work now. As for the powerful Chao family of the embroidered uniform guard, although everyone was still a little afraid in their hearts, when they thought about it, would they be fine if they did not become enemies with them? Since there would be a battle sooner or later, there was no need to be polite. Let's see whose methods were stronger. As long as Mao Mu could block Chao Zhixiang's sharpness after his return, they had nothing to be afraid of. After all, these people were all capable people. Shen Nantang and the others could not take Chao Zhixiang seriously because their status was not high enough to reach that level. But there were people who took Chao Zhixiang seriously, such as his younger brother Chao Zheng and the others. Chao Zheng and the others were very opposed to Mao Mu coming to the embroidered uniform guard to take up the position of deputy factory director. This was because there was no permanent position in the embroidered uniform guard. On the contrary, such a position would be added in some special times. However, that was usually when the old and new factory directors took over. The problem was that Chao Zhixiang had not lost power. Didn't he frequently enter the palace to see the emperor a while ago? They did not understand why there was a deputy factory director. Of course, if it was only a deputy factory director, everyone would not be that surprised. They would worship him like a bodhisattva. Even if they were in a bad mood, they could ignore him. They were from the Chao family. As long as Chao Zhixiang's banner did not fall, what did they have to be afraid of? In the end, it was very likely that this deputy factory director would only have a name and no power. So much so that they could not even order an ordinary embroidered uniform guard around. At that time, they would probably go back with their tails between their legs. However, it seemed that Mao Mu did not think that way. He actually pulled Wu Ben, who was about to die, to be his trusted aide. Then, he went to the discipline prison and ransomed several capable criminals in a row. This made it difficult for people to see through him. The embroidered uniform guard had its own rules. Those who did not commit any major crimes could be ransomed after paying the ransom. This was originally set by Chao Zhixiang. This was also a method to amass wealth. With so many brothers following them, they had to eat, and that required money. No one had any doubts about this. Mao Mu did things according to the rules and did not rely on his official status to suppress people. No one questioned anything. However, the problem was that before they could react, two Qianhu positions were set. They were not from the Chao family, but Shen Nantang and Wu Ben, who had been dealt with by the Chao family. Chao Zheng and the others could not stand this. This clearly meant that they wanted to seize power, right? If people who were not from the Chao family could also become Qianhu, then the blow to the Chao family could be imagined. What was even worse was that after this incident, whether or not the embroidered uniform guards would listen to the Chao family's words would be a question mark. It was impossible for Chao Zheng and the others not to panic after such a thing happened. However, there was nothing they could do. Even though they were all commanders, comrades, or administrators, in reality, they didn't have much power. They all took orders from Chao Zhixiang alone. They also did not have any channels to speak to the higher-ups. Chapter 1664. In other words, without Chao Zhixiang, these people could only control one embroidered uniform guard. If someone wanted to attack the embroidered uniform guard, they could do nothing but watch. Wait for Big Brother to come back. Everything will be done. At that time, we will make Mao Mu suffer. Seeing so many people from the Chao faction looking at him with expectant eyes, Chao Zheng had no choice but to say this. That's the only way. Everyone could only nod in agreement. Over the years, Chao Zhixiang still had some tricks up his sleeve. At least these people were convinced by him. However, they did not know that Chao Zhixiang would not be able to come back. In the southern Yiming imperial court, the first person to know about Chao Zhixiang's accident was Emperor Zhu Qizhen. The reason why Zhu Qizhen knew about this was because Chief Eunuch Qian Sengbao told him. Qian Sengbao heard it from Mao Mu. When Mao Mu reported to Yang Chendong through his contact group that he had begun to reach out to the embroidered uniform guard and obtained a good start, Yang Chendong sent this information to Mao Mu. Not only that, he also told the contact group that Yang Xie was mobilizing the military supplies, mobilizing the army, and preparing to go to war with the Southern Ming Empire. This was to allow Mao Mu to stabilize his position. As for whether this would expose his strategic intentions and cause the Southern Ming Empire to prepare in advance, would Yang Chendong care? Some things could not be hidden at all. What's more, Yang Chendong couldn't wait for the Southern Ming Empire to gather their armies. This way, he would be able to achieve success in one battle. It would be better than attacking every single city and ultimately destroying the Southern Ming Empire. What Yang Chendong wanted was a rich and populous Southern Ming dynasty, not a mess. From this point of view, it was undoubtedly better to give the Southern Ming Empire time to gather their army and end the war with a big battle. What did you say? In the side hall, Zhu Qizhen's face was filled with shock. Then he reached out and grabbed Qian Sengbao's neck, questioning him loudly. Seeing Zhu Qizhen's eyes that seemed to be able to devour people, Qian Sengbao was truly frightened. But when he thought about how he was the first to receive this information, it was equivalent to making a great contribution. He was no longer afraid and repeated, "Your Majesty, the embroidered uniform guard has sent news that eunuch Chao's matter has been exposed and has fallen into the hands of Bugnam of Gojosian. Bugnam of Gojosian obtained the imperial edict from Chao Jixiang's hands for Yang Shunming. Then, he used the excuse that the South Ming Empire wanted to attack him and prepared to attack the South Ming Empire. Right now, Qiqian City is transferring troops and supplies to Guangxi to accumulate strength." Zhu Qizhen's footsteps involuntarily took a few steps back when his hand loosened. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Qian Sengbao reacted quickly and supported him. At this moment, Zhu Qizhen's mind was a mess. From Qian Sengbao's report, something really did happen to Chao Jixiang. Otherwise, Qian Sengbao wouldn't have said anything about the imperial edict. This was top secret. This Chao Jixiang was truly stupid. Didn't he say it before? If things didn't go well, he had to bring the imperial edict back safely. If not, he had to burn it. How could he let it fall into the hands of Yang Chendong? Now, with the imperial edict establishing Bugnam of Gojosian in his hands, Yang Chendong had a righteous cause in his hands. He had a legitimate reason to make a move against the South Ming Empire. This was truly lifting a rock and smashing it on his own feet. Your Majesty, are you all right?" Qian Sengbao, who was afraid that Zhu Qizhen's anger would harm his body, hurriedly asked carefully after a while. Qian Sengbao's call brought Zhu Qizhen back to his senses. Then he rejoiced. Fortunately, he knew everything in advance. This way, he could immediately make some preparations. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Qian Sengbao with a gratified expression and said, "Great companion, you did well in this matter. The embroidered uniform guard is also very capable. Now that something has happened to Chao Jixiang, have you thought of a successor?" Previously, when Mao Mu reported this matter to Qian Sengbao, he was truly shocked. Firstly, he was shocked that Chao Jixiang would be captured by Bugnam of Gojosian. Of course, he was secretly happy in his heart. This meant that he had one less powerful opponent. Secondly, he was shocked that this news was actually known by Mao Mu so quickly. Could it be that the embroidered uniform guard really had such strength? But why didn't he see them as capable before? Seeing Qian Sengbao's puzzled expression, Mao Mu had already prepared an explanation and said, "Duke Qian, actually, there are still many capable people in the disarming uniform guard. It's just that because Chao Jixiang eliminated dissidents and only knew how to make money, he was suppressed. Now that these people have obtained Duke Qian's support and have a certain amount of power, they naturally have to do their best. It's not a big deal to find out some things." Because of Chao Jixiang, Qian Sengbao didn't know much about the embroidered uniform guard's work. Thus, he didn't have any doubts after hearing everything from Mao Mu. Then he patted Mao Mu's shoulder and said, "Not bad, you did well in this matter. Since something has happened to Duke Chao, then you can be promoted to the position of Vice Duke." "Many thanks, Duke Qian." Mao Mu was waiting for these words. Immediately, a banknote worth 220,000 was delivered to Qian Sengbao. Looking at the number on the banknote, Qian Sengbao's heart skipped a beat. Then, he put it away and patted his chest, saying that he would take care of this matter. In fact, even if Mao Mu didn't give him the banknote, he most likely wouldn't be able to run away from the position of Vice Duke. After all, Qian Sengbao was already the head eunuch. If he became the embroidered uniform guard's vice-duke, then his power would be too great. Even the emperor would be afraid of him. Even if he couldn't take the position, he couldn't let others take advantage of it. It had to be known that other than Chao Jixiang, there was still the imperial horse eunuch, Kai Zhong, keeping an eye on him. Compared to the ambitious Kai Zhong, the obedient Mao Mu who knew how to be filial to him was more suitable. How could Mao Mu not understand this logic? However, he still gave the banknote. It was for the sake of making Qian Sengbao put more effort into recommending him. Using 200,000 taels of silver to settle the matter and obtain the position of Vice-Duke of the Embroidered Uniform Guard was definitely not a loss. When the emperor asked, Qian Sengbao, who was already prepared, immediately said, "Your Majesty, have you forgotten? Didn't Duke Mao Mu, who served the Empress, become the Vice-Duke of the Embroidered Uniform Guard? It must be said that he is quite capable. In such a short time, he has already managed the Embroidered Uniform Guard in an orderly manner. For example, this information was provided by him. He actually has this kind of ability. It seems that we have overlooked the talented person by our side. Since that's the case, Mao Mu is capable and loyal enough. Furthermore, he has the recommendation of the Vice-Duke. Then, let Mao Mu take over the position of Vice-Duke. Tell him that we look forward to his continued efforts and creating new achievements." This subject obeys. Qian Sengbao saw that he had achieved his goal and was naturally overjoyed. However, the worry on Zhu Qizhen's face did not disappear. He continued, "How about this? Pass down our decree and announce to the world that the previous Vice-Duke of the Embroidered Uniform Guard, Chao Jixiang, stole our imperial edict and secretly stamped the imperial seal. The Southern Ming Imperial Court will not recognize his actions, and neither will we." Zhu Qizhen acted shamelessly. Although smart people could clearly see what was going on, would a eunuch, even if he had some power, really dare to secretly write an imperial edict and stamp it with the imperial seal? However, seeing through was one thing. If Zhu Qizhen did not recognize it, at least he could salvage some of the influence. Mao Mu thus became the Vice-Duke of the Embroidered Uniform Guard. Shen Nantang, Wu Ben, and the others were naturally overjoyed. Chao Zheng and the others' expressions were very ugly. Their backer, Chao Jixiang, had fallen into the hands of Bugnam of Gojoseon. It could be imagined that he would not return in this lifetime. As people of Chao Jixiang's faction, where should they go from here? Chao Zheng was the current commander of the Embroidered Uniform Guard. It seemed that he held great power. However, he was just a dog by Chao Jixiang's side, a chess piece. In the end, he was just an important chess piece. He was not a eunuch. Without an imperial edict, he could not enter the palace, let alone see the emperor. In terms of influence in the palace in front of the emperor, he was naturally far inferior to Mao Mu, who was originally the head of the eunuchs. Now that Mao Mu's position was above his, Chao Zheng was suddenly in a difficult position. He did not know what to do. Bow down to Mao Mu? The people of Chao Jixiang, who had always been proud, were not willing to do so. At least, Chao Zheng believed that he and the others still had the strength to fight. Thinking of the arrangements that his elder brother, Chao Jixiang, had made in the Embroidered Uniform Guard for more than 10 years, he decided to wrestle with Mao Mu. As long as he could control the entire Embroidered Uniform Guard at that time, he would not have to worry about Mao Mu not coming to talk to him. At that time, he would bow down and raise some conditions. Then, he would be able to regain the initiative. Chao Zheng told his thoughts to the other people of Chao Jixiang and received everyone's support. They were all grasshoppers on the same rope. At this moment, no one could escape. They could only try their best. However, they had imagined themselves to be too powerful, and they had underestimated Mao Mu too much. Without power, without an official position, and without a strong economic foundation like Mao Mu, the result of the struggle was inevitable. In particular, after the Embroidered Uniform Guard learned that Chao Jixiang had been captured by Bugnam of Gojoseon, the people who had been suppressed immediately began to have ideas. At this time, Shen Nantang, Wu Ben, and the others began to recruit people. They gave money and official positions. It was easy to imagine who would be willing to work for the Chao Jisheng faction. Not long after, not only did the people who had been suppressed stand on Shen Nantong's side, the neutral people also stood on Shen Nantong's side. Even some of the unimportant people in the Chao Jisheng faction began to have ideas and came to seek refuge. Moreover, they were not empty-handed. They had all sorts of evidence of corruption in the Chao Jisheng faction. Everyone kicks a man who is down. After nearly a month, the embroidered uniform guard began a bloody purge. Anyone who was a member of the Chao Jisheng faction or was related to the Chao Jisheng faction in the end became the target of the purge. Mao Mu was beginning to prepare for Yang Xie's entry in advance. He wanted to give Yang Xie a team that could fight, not a person who only held a position and did not do anything. Chapter 1665. The chaos within the embroidered uniform guard naturally didn't escape the eyes of the ministers, so they happily clapped their hands. For a long time, the existence of the embroidered uniform guard was like a sharp arrow suspended above the heads of the ministers, making them endlessly afraid. After all, you can guarantee that you won't make a mistake, but can you guarantee that your family won't make a mistake? If the embroidered uniform guard wanted to deal with you, they could always find your weakness. If it was light, they could blackmail you. If it was heavy, they could send you to the imperial prison. Who knew how many officials had fallen into their hands because of this? High and mighty officials had become prisoners. Now, the embroidered uniform guard was in chaos. They could relax and not be so afraid. Because of this, during this period of time, many ministers had reported the benefits of the embroidered uniform guard. They wanted to use their own advocacy to make the embroidered uniform guard last longer. It would be best if they crippled their own martial arts and got rid of this department for a long time. Zhu Qizhen saw so many ministers agree and compared himself to Yao Shun, saying how wise he was. In addition, Mao Mu really didn't have any thoughts. After taking care of the Chao faction, he handed over all the gold and silver he had stolen from them. He actually collected 2 million taels of silver, making him endlessly happy. What was wrong with the emperor? He also needed money. As long as he had money, his subordinates would be willing to work for him. Only then would he be able to achieve fair rewards and punishments. It could be said that a rich emperor's back was strong and could do anything he wanted. As for a poor emperor, it was just a thought. Now that Zhu Qizhen had money, he began to mobilize his troops and prepare provisions and military equipment. He wanted to have a showdown with Yang Shi. At this time, Qian Sengbao reported that the embroidered uniform guard's director, Mao Mu, wanted to see him. He said that he had something important to report to the emperor. At this time, after Mao Mu unified the embroidered uniform guard, he began to bare his fangs. He slowly went past Qian Sengbao to report to Zhu Qizhen. This was the first time he tried to sound him out, so Mao Mu wasn't too anxious. Instead, he wrote some of the contents of his report to Qian Sengbao. When Qian Sengbao saw the report that was nearly a foot thick, he knew that he couldn't do this. He could report according to the text, but once it involved specific matters, if the emperor asked a detailed question, he couldn't answer. Thus, he took the initiative to ask Mao Mu to personally report to him. Faced with Qian Sengbao's request, Mao Mu naturally rejected it. He even said that he was Qian Sengbao's subordinate, so how could he report to the emperor without his permission? This was impossible. Mao Mu's attitude made Qian Sengbao very satisfied, and he immediately confirmed what he wanted to report. This led to today's events. The recent work of the embroidered uniform guards had been very effective. Not only did they win the reputation of the officials, but they also earned money. Zhu Qizhen had long wanted to call Mao Mu to encourage them. However, his great companion, Qian Sengbao, said that Mao Mu was very busy, so he gave up the idea. Now that the other party had come knocking on his door, of course he had to meet him. In the Qinzheng Hall, Mao Mu saw Zhu Qizhen sitting high on the dragon throne. He also saw Qian Sengbao standing to the side with a smile on his face. For some reason, he always had a feeling that behind that smile was a hidden killing intent, as if he did not perform well, the other party would come to settle the score with him. Mao Mu knew his own strength very well. Although he had taken control of the embroidered uniform guards, he had been silent for too long. If he wanted to fight Qian Xingbao head-on, his strength was still not enough. Now that he still needed to rely on the other party, he naturally knew what to do next. First, he respectfully knelt on the ground and kowtowed, shouting "Long live." After Zhu Qizhen asked him to stand up, he stood up and gave a detailed report on the performance of the ministers. Especially those officials who went to Xianxia, their actions were reported by Mao Mu in detail. At first, Zhu Qizhen still had a smile on his face. He could feel that Mao Mu's work was very detailed, which made him very happy. He was excited that he had found another talent. However, as Mao Mu reported more and more, he began to lose his cool. Especially after hearing so many officials talk about how powerful Xianxia was and how he could not defeat them, his face turned black. He knew that Xianxia would not be so kind as to let the officials go to Tsushin City for free. However, when he considered that Xianxia was indeed powerful, there were many things that could be learned. In addition, his arrogance caused trouble. In Zhu Qizhen's heart, Yingtian Prefecture used to be the capital of the great Ming dynasty. Later on, it became the capital. The prosperity here was not something that a deserted island could catch up to in a short time. He wanted to see Yang Chendong make a fool of himself and let everyone see the difference between the two sides. In order to calm the hearts of the officials, he agreed to send the observation team. However, ever since the Crown Prince's junior tutor, Minister of War Kuang Yi, was chased back early and heard about what happened in Yangxia, he felt that things were going to go south. He hurriedly gave an edict to end the observation team early. He thought that since the time was too short, it should not be a big problem. During this period of time, he was preparing for war and did not care so much about it. Now that he heard Mao Mu's report, he knew that the attitude of the officials under him had changed greatly. Following Mao Mu's report, these officials actually compared Crimson City to a heaven-like existence and even exaggerated the strength of the Yang faction. There were even people who were pessimistic and said that if the Southern Ming Empire fought with the Yang faction, they would definitely lose. This was disrupting the morale of the army. Even if these people were killed, it would not be enough to vent his anger. Zhu Qizhen was angry. Investigate. If there are any unfavorable words, investigate them thoroughly. As you command. Mao Mu hurriedly replied. However, he did not leave immediately. Instead, he raised his head and gave Qian Xingbao a meaningful look. After Qian Xingbao received the signal, he hurriedly bowed and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, I'm afraid that just investigating is useless. Some people will not shed tears until they see the coffin. If we allow them to develop, I'm afraid that before the army even leaves, the morale of the army will already be broken. How can we win then? As the saying goes, special times call for special measures." Yes, Dahu is right. Right now, the Southern Ming dynasty is facing a matter of life and death. We cannot be soft-hearted. If we investigate them, we will lock them up and deal with them. However, you must remember that we must have evidence. We cannot catch the wrong person. Zhu Qizhen said as if he had just realized something. This was the result that Mao Mu wanted. After saying "as you command," he left the side hall. For Qian Xingbao to stand up at this time, it was naturally the result of discussion. In Mao Mu's words, this was a good opportunity to accumulate wealth. Those officials were all rich people. As long as they caught them, they would not have to worry about not having enough money to ransom them. In short, this time, they had to make the officials bow their heads to the eunuchs. Qian Xingbao was 100% in favor of Mao Mu's suggestion. Ever since the defeat of the Tumu Castle because of Wang Zhen, the eunuchs had always been the target of the officials. If Zhu Qizhen did not like the eunuchs, they would have no way to survive if it was an emperor. As the chief eunuch, Qian Xingbao had always been careful. He was afraid that if he did something wrong, it would cause the officials to impeach him. Now that he finally had a chance to fight back, he would definitely seize the opportunity. Thus, the officials were originally clapping and cheering as they watched the embroidered uniform guards fall into chaos. However, they could not be happy because after the embroidered uniform guards had a unified leader, they began to target them. On the day that Mao Mu left the Qingjing Hall, 4 officials had their homes searched by the embroidered uniform guards. Among them, 1 was a 4th-rank official and 3 were 5th-rank officials. Although their ranks were a little low, it was already a clear signal. Soon, news spread from the palace. This was the start of the operation after Mao Mu, the new embroidered uniform guards, reported to the emperor. However, it was also said that Mao Mu only said that he wanted to investigate. It was Qian Sengbao who suggested to arrest the eunuchs. He also said that special times called for special measures. These officials did not dare to scold the emperor, but Qian Sengbao was just a eunuch. They did not have any scruples. For a moment, curses were heard everywhere. The impeachment memorials were as numerous as the hair on an ox. They covered the dragon table. Qian Sengbao was really angry. He first severely punished the eunuchs who were on duty in the Qingjing Hall that day. After killing 3 and seriously injuring 9, he did not get anything out of them. But it did not matter. Things had already come to this. Qian Sengbao was determined to go all the way and teach these officials a lesson. He immediately sent someone to inform Mao Mu to increase the intensity. In short, he wanted the civil officials to bow their heads to him, the chief eunuch. Otherwise, the arrest would not stop. The Minister of Revenue's residence. Wang Shang was riding a bicycle in the courtyard with an unhappy expression. Her small face was scrunched up. Anyone who saw her would know that she was unhappy. Ever since returning from Tsuxian City, Wang Jiqing had been riding a bicycle through the capital's streets and alleys. He did not know how many people looked at him, but he also did not know how many envious gazes he received. After all, Wang Jiqing was still a child. His desire to show off was at its peak. Thus, he rode the bicycle even faster. In addition, the children of the other officials had also bought 4 bicycles. They traveled with 5 bicycles, which attracted a lot of attention. As the younger sister, Wang Shang was naturally unhappy. She also had a share of the money used to buy the bicycles. Moreover, she had borrowed quite a bit from her sisters. Why should her brother take all the fruits of victory for himself? She acted coquettishly and persuaded Wang Jiqing in every possible way. In the end, Wang Jiqing had no choice but to agree to lend the bicycles to her for 3 days after half a month of riding. Although it was only 3 days, Wang Shang was already very satisfied. After all, in this era, women were mostly in a subordinate position. It was impossible for them to enjoy true fairness. She scratched her fingers day after day. Finally, when it was time for her to use the bicycles for 3 days, her grandfather suddenly had the servants close the courtyard doors after the morning court session. He also said that no one in the family was allowed to leave without permission. Chapter 1666. Wang Shang couldn't accept this. She had already asked her friends to ride the bike together and she wanted to show off like an older brother. How could she be happy when her plans were disrupted? After riding a few laps around the courtyard, Wang Shang felt that she had completely adapted to the bicycle and could ride it with ease. Then, she carefully went to the back door of the manor with her personal maidservant. As the young master, she ordered the servants to open the door and went out into the streets. Wang Shang could finally ride the bike on the streets. She could feel the envious gazes of the passers-by, especially those who looked like scholars. They pointed at her from afar and looked at her with yearning. She immediately felt proud, like a general who had just won a battle. However, the good times didn't last long. A few burly embroidered uniform guards suddenly rushed out from the side of the street and blocked Wang Shang's path. The sudden braking caused Wang Shang to almost fall to the ground. Then she shouted unhappily, "Good dogs don't block the road." Wang Shang claimed that she was the granddaughter of Minister Wang, so there weren't many things in the world that could scare her. She thought that the embroidered uniform guards would immediately retreat after she shouted her name. She didn't expect that she and her bike would be arrested after she said her name. Only her maidservant was left standing on the ground and crying anxiously. Wang Shang was quickly brought to the embroidered uniform guard's office after she was arrested. Her bike was detained and she was also arranged to a small room so that she could explain her views on Crimson City. Her identity seemed to have worked because the embroidered uniform guard smiled and guided her. "Miss, you've been to Crimson City before, so you must know where it is. I heard that you're quite good at writing. Can you write it down? If you write well, not only can we let you go, we can also give you a bike. How about it? Wang Shang didn't like the embroidered uniform guards because of her grandfather. However, when she heard that she could get a bike if she performed well, she was tempted. She didn't want to borrow a bike from her brother. It would be great if she could have one herself. She immediately asked, "Do you really have a bike?" "Of course. Our Imperial Secret Service is very capable. It's just a bicycle." Luo Zhu, who was wearing a commander's uniform, said with a smile on his face. "Alright, bring me a pen and paper." For the sake of a bicycle, Wang Shang was willing to go all out. As for what would happen if these embroidered uniform guards lied to him afterwards? Wasn't that simple? He could just complain to his grandfather. He didn't believe that they weren't afraid of the Minister of Revenue. Wang Shang was indeed from a scholarly family. It didn't take him long to write an essay. Although it wasn't particularly beautiful, the sentences were smooth. Especially when he described the beauty of Crimson Castle, his strokes were divine. The description was quite good. Wang Shang also played a little trick. As if she was afraid that the other party would not think highly of her essay, she even added some sentences about her grandfather, Wang Zue, in her essay. Her intention was very simple. She wanted to tell the other party about her identity and not to look down on others. If there were any benefits, they had to share it with her. Satisfied, Luo Zhu left. He told Wang Shang that he still needed to report to the higher-ups to see if the essay was up to standard. Then, they would consider rewarding him with a bicycle. Wang Shang was so happy that she urged him to hurry up. With this essay in hand, Luo Zhu went to find Shen Nantang, who had become a commander of the Imperial Secret Service. After the Chao family was expelled from the Imperial Secret Service, the people who had followed Mao Mu from the beginning were promoted. For example, Luo Zhu was promoted to a 4th-rank commander, and Shen Nantang was promoted to a 3rd-rank commander. Shen Nantang looked at Wang Shang's essay and couldn't bear to see it. Wang's reputation among the people was quite good. He wasn't greedy and didn't form factions. He was one of the few good officials in the southern Ming dynasty. However, there was no other way. It was eunuch Mao Mu's idea to trap the Wang family. Now, no one in the Imperial Secret Service dared to question eunuch Mao Mu. Mao Mu's status and influence in the Imperial Secret Service was far greater than Chao Zhixiang's. This was all because Mao Mu thought about everyone and was willing to spend money. What he meant was that unless he gave the order, the Imperial Secret Service wasn't allowed to accept bribes. It was precisely because of this that the Imperial Secret Service was holding their chests high. This was because they didn't ask for help and didn't have anything that could be used against them. Of course, they had also paid a lot of money for Fu Mao Mu. In addition to not deducting a single cent from the wages of the Imperial Secret Service, he would also give everyone a monthly allowance based on their contributions. Last month, those who performed well received 120 taels. For the Imperial Secret Service, this wasn't just enough to feed their families. It was already a source of income. Since it was eunuch Mao Mu's order, Shen Nantang naturally had to follow it. Not to mention, the position of commander was there for everyone to see. Between him and Wu Ben, whoever performed well would be given that position. At this moment, he couldn't afford to make any mistakes. "Bring those essays over. I'll give them to eunuch Mao." With a sigh, Shen Nantang finally bowed his head to reality. There was nothing he could do. This was the sorrow of a small figure. He didn't do things according to his own will. Very quickly, the essays were delivered to Mao Mu. After briefly reading through them, he went straight to the Hall of Diligent Government. After this period of hard work, he now had the qualifications to report to Zhu Qizhen alone. It was the same treatment as Chao Zhixiang in the past. Although he had the treatment, Mao Mu still kept a low profile. When he entered the side hall, he saw that Qian Sengbao was on duty. He quickly bowed and explained his purpose. In the end, he didn't forget to add, "Eunuch Qian, next month's allowance will be sent to you in 2 days." Qian Sengbao's face was full of smiles. That was tens of thousands of taels of silver. In his eyes, Mao Mu was undoubtedly a god of wealth. Although he was curious about where the other party got the money, no matter what, it was enough that the money was sent to him. Why would he care so much about it? All right, have you thought about who to give the position of commander to? Qian Xingbao couldn't help but ask. That was an income of 500,000 taels of silver. How could he not be anxious? Eunuch Qian, you also know that both Wu Ben and Shenantang have performed well. In order to give them more motivation, this matter has to be delayed. Of course, the money will definitely be sent in the end. It's just a matter of a month or two to show filial respect to you. Mao Mu explained with a smile. It's fine. This eunuch is just asking. Qian Xingbao smiled politely and then said, all right, His Majesty is still waiting for you. Quickly go and do your job. Mao Mu bowed again. Only then did he tidy up his clothes. After seeing that there were no problems, he strode into the side hall. After Mao Mu sent the articles in front of Zhu Qizhen, it only took a short while for a roar to be heard. You dare to care about these officials? You're taking the salary we give you and not doing your job properly. Instead, you're thinking about the good of others. Hateful. Mao Mu lowered his head and picked up the articles scattered on the ground. After waiting for Zhu Qizhen to calm down a little, he asked tentatively, Your Majesty, what should we do next? Arrest them? Facing this question, Zhu Qizhen's face revealed a pained expression. He had already seen it. These articles were basically written by the officials of the court, and even the descendants of important officials. Didn't that mean that these important officials were unreliable? If they really arrested people based on the list of people who wrote the articles, the Southern Ming Empire would be in chaos for a while. However, they could not arrest them. These people's hearts were no longer with the Southern Ming Empire. If they continued to be put in important positions, it would only be more dangerous. As the saying goes, a short pain is better than a long pain. Take it. Take all the people in this article. Take all their backings and investigate them thoroughly. But remember, don't use torture to extort confessions. And you should know your limits. You're also an old person in the palace. Mao Mu, you've done well recently. Zhen is very pleased. After Zhu Qizhen vented his anger, he looked at Mao Mu with admiration in his eyes. This person was able to do things so beautifully in such a short period of time and obtain information that could be used against those officials. His methods were truly outstanding. Why didn't he realize that this person was a talent before? Mao Mu knelt on the ground gratefully and quickly kowtowed. This is all because of your Majesty and Empress teachings. This servant should do his duty. All right, you can rise. You're really good. In the future, you can call yourself a subject in front of Zhen. There's no need to call yourself a servant. Zhu Qizhen laughed and gave Mao Mu another privilege. Don't look at this simple title. In the entire group of eunuchs, only 3 people could call themselves subjects. They were Qian Xingbao, Kai Zhong, and the captured Chao Jixiang. Right now, Mao Mu had replaced Chao Jixiang's previous position. Yes, this subject thanks your Majesty again. Haha. Looking at the kneeling Mao Mu, Zhu Qizhen stroked his beard and laughed in satisfaction. After leaving the palace and receiving the imperial decree, Mao Mu was in high spirits. No one knew better than him that the people who were captured this time were all capable officials of the Southern Ming Empire. In other words, once these officials were imprisoned, it was equivalent to the Southern Ming Empire's political power collapsing by half. This was greatly beneficial for the Yangxie's next move against the Southern Ming Empire. At the same time, the official residence of the Ministry of Personnel had already become chaotic. Wang's most beloved granddaughter, Wang Shang, had mischievously walked out of the residence and was caught by the embroidered uniform guards on the streets. When the accompanying servant girl came back to report, bursts of crying rang out in the manor. Wang Shang's mother, Wang Xianxia, was the one crying the loudest. Her crying made Wang's eldest son, Wang Shang's father, Wang Guang, who was currently serving in the Ministry of Personnel, extremely anxious. Wang's quickly found out about the commotion here. His wife, Wang Xianxia, also started crying. She then said that the embroidered uniform guards were all bastards, demons who killed without batting an eyelid. This time, Wang Shang had fallen into their hands. Who knew what would happen? Chapter 1667. Compared to the woman who only knew how to cry, Wang Zhuo was clearly much calmer. If it were in the past, he would definitely be very nervous when the embroidered uniform guard captured his family. He knew that the embroidered uniform guard was best at listing crimes. When they wanted to deal with a person, they would often use all kinds of methods. Even if there was no crime, they would put the blame on the person, causing many unjust and wrong cases. This was also the reason why the officials disliked and hated the embroidered uniform guard. However, now that the embroidered uniform guard had undergone an internal reorganization, the new chief Mao Mu was a good old man. He smiled at everyone he saw. Moreover, this kind of smile wasn't superficial. It was a real smile. Because Wang Zhuo often went to the palace, he had met him twice. Both times, the other party was very respectful. This was something that Wang Zhuo, who boasted that he had seen countless people, could clearly feel. The embroidered uniform guard had changed its leader, so its style should also change. Even so, the outcome of Wang Shang's capture might not be so bad. Wang Zhuo comforted himself in his heart. He was still wondering if he should go to the palace or directly ask the embroidered uniform guard for Wang Shang. With his status as a minister, in addition to his influence and seniority in the court, Mao Mu would definitely give him face. However, he was a minister after all and had been a minister for several dynasties. In terms of calmness, he was still good. He still wanted to see the situation before making a decision. He didn't want to give up his old face to beg for help so quickly. He still wanted to, there was no need to think. Before Wang Zhuo could make a decision, the embroidered uniform guard had already arrived. First, they surrounded the prince's residence, then a group of people jumped in through the door. The servants watching the house were so frightened that they knelt on the ground, not even having the courage to stop them. Compared to before, the current embroidered uniform guard brothers had undergone a huge change. They didn't do the dirty work of extortion and framing anymore. With money, their abilities could be put to use. The current embroidered uniform guard no longer muddled along and waited for death. Each of them was an expert and very brave. More importantly, Mao Mu no longer deducted everyone's salary. He also did his best to satisfy the embroidered uniform guard brothers in terms of equipment. In the past, because of the lack of money and the greed of the Chao family, the low-level members of the embroidered uniform guard often didn't even have the money to change their clothes. Therefore, sometimes, they would wear tattered flying fish suits to carry out missions to make people feel to look very down and out. Unlike now, the flying fish suits are all over the place. Since they were in a good mood, their complexion was good, and they were all skilled in martial arts. As soon as they appeared, they gave me a feeling of elites and a murderous aura. Frightened by the embroidered uniform guard's imposing manner, no one dared to stop them. When the group of people arrived at the Wang family's courtyard, Xianxia shouted, "Is there anyone in charge? Come out and answer me." This time, Xianxia came to the prince's mansion to invite Minister Wang. This was enough to prove that the embroidered uniform guard valued this minister. Soon, the sound of footsteps could be heard. The members of the Wang clan's various courtyards, including the servants, and guards, all walked out. Walking at the front was an elderly man, but judging from his calm footsteps, although this person was very old, his aura and spirit were still very strong. Needless to say, only the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhuo, could have such an imposing aura in the prince's residence. Wang Zhuo walked straight until he was 5 or 6 steps in front of Xianxia and the others. Then, he said in a voice that was neither servile nor overbearing, "This official is the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhuo. May I know your name?" Xianxia naturally knew Wang Zhuo. The embroidered uniform guard had detailed information about these important ministers. Therefore, when he saw the person in charge, he first cupped his hands and bowed. Then he put down his hands and put his right hand on the embroidered spring saber at his waist, saying, "Minister Wang, this humble one is the embroidered uniform guard's minister Xianxia. This time, I am acting on imperial orders. I hope Minister Wang can cooperate." As he spoke, Shen Nantang took out a secret order and presented it in front of Wang Zhuo. Reaching out to take it, his eyes fell on the secret order. Seeing that it was the emperor's decree and was stamped with the imperial seal, he knew that the matter could not be changed. Wang Zhuo's brows were tightly knitted together. Then he sighed and said, "Since you are acting on the emperor's orders, this old man will naturally cooperate and go with you. However, my family is innocent. Please don't make things difficult for them. This is natural. Nowadays, the embroidered uniform guard does things according to the law. As long as Minister Wang cooperates, your family will naturally not have to worry." Shen Nantang immediately guaranteed. Hearing Shen Nantang's words, Wang Zhuo nodded and then stretched out his hands, saying, "Then this old man will go with you." "Father! Grandfather! Master!" For a moment, the shouts came one after another. Then, uncontrollable cries came from the courtyard. Clearly, everyone could see that this time, the embroidered uniform guard had come to capture Wang Zhuo. Without this pillar of support, half of the Wang residents would collapse. "What are you crying for?" "This old man is just being asked to assist in the investigation. It's not like I have already been convicted." Wang Zhuo was not satisfied with his family's performance. His gaze fell on his eldest son, Wang Guang, and said, "Guang, father is not here. You have to take care of the family. Take care of your mother, brother, and children." "Yes, father, don't worry." Wang Guang also said with tears in his eyes. "Okay, let's go." Wang Zhuo knew that at this time, it was meaningless to say anything more. It was better to leave immediately. He said to Shen Nantang, "Shen Tongji, let's do it." Seeing that Wang Zhuo was very cooperative, Shen Nantang's eyes showed that he could not bear to see him like this. "There's no need to use tricks. This official believes that Minister Wang will cooperate with us." This meant that he did not need to be shackled. Wang Zhuo thought for a moment and threw a grateful look at Shen Nantang. After all, it would be very embarrassing to be shackled in front of his family. This was the last shred of dignity that he had left. Wang Zhuo left. The group of embroidered uniform guards did as Shen Nantang said. They did not make things difficult for the people of the Wang residence. They did not even leave people to keep an eye on them. The people of the Wang residence were free to enter and leave. If Wang Zhuo had not been taken away, perhaps everyone would have thought that it was just a dream. After Wang Zhuo left, the eldest son, Wang Guang, sent people to take good care of his mother, Wang Xianxia. He also arranged for the guards and parents to guard the courtyard. Then he hurriedly left the residence with people. He wanted to move around and find the officials that were on good terms with his father, as well as other ministers, to see if there was any way to save the situation. However, Wang Guang was destined to be disappointed. Because on this day, not only was his father taken away by the embroidered uniform guards, many important officials in the court were also taken away. Among them were the Minister of Appointments Chen Sun, the Minister of Rights Xie Chong, the Minister of Justice Xiao Xian, and so on. For a moment, the capital was in chaos. The officials were also in danger. They constantly sent people to find out what had happened and whether the embroidered uniform guards would continue to take people away. In the palace, Mao Mu became the most popular person. Anyone who had some connections with him would send people to inquire about the situation. As for himself, he was drinking tea with someone in a small courtyard in the palace. Across from Mao Mu sat a eunuch wearing an official's robe. His dark eyes had already swept over Mao Mu countless times. Mao Mu hated this kind of unrestrained gaze. However, he knew that now was not the time to fall out with the eunuch. At the very least, the opportunity was not ripe yet. Across from him sat one of the three great eunuchs of the southern Ming dynasty, Kai Zhong, who controlled the Imperial Horse Directorate. At the same time, he was also one of the eunuchs in charge of writing. He was the kind of person who could be summoned by the emperor at any time and had the opportunity to serve him at any time. It was precisely because of Kai Zhong's relationship that he could reach the heavenly court that Mao Mu was very polite to him. He even had to bow to him as a junior. After all, in terms of age and experience, Kai Zhong was indeed much stronger than him. Only a chief eunuch like Qian Sengbao would not be at a disadvantage when facing him. Good tea. Mao Mu quietly flattered him, breaking the somewhat awkward atmosphere. Drink more of this good tea. When we leave in a moment, I will send someone to deliver some to you, Sir Mao. Kai Zhong smiled. However, when others saw this smile, they couldn't help but feel a wave of goosebumps. Many thanks, Sir Kai. However, I don't know if Sir Kai has summoned Mao Mu for something? Mao Mu didn't want to believe that Kai Zhong would be so kind as to invite him to drink tea. He definitely had something to say. At the very least, he really couldn't figure out what it was. AI, how could I dare to order you? Sir Mao is currently the Emperor's favorite. I can't wait to curry favor with you. How could I dare to order you? Sir Kai is too kind. This humble one is truly unable to accept it. Mao Mu smiled and returned Kai Zhong's gaze with a soft glare. Although in terms of experience, he was indeed inferior to Kai Zhong, if Kai Zhong wanted to step on him, he had the power to resist. With Empress Qian's approval and trust, in addition to the power he held in the embroidered uniform guard, Kai Zhong couldn't do whatever he wanted. Kai Zhong naturally understood this point. That was why he called Mao Mu over to discuss this matter and invited him to drink tea. He wasn't like the other eunuchs, who could just directly give him orders. Sensing a trace of rejection in Mao Mu's words, Kai Zhong laughed. He could understand Mao Mu's feelings. When he first took over the position, he faced those powerful and experienced old eunuchs, just like today. It was because of this experience that he wouldn't underestimate Mao Mu, much less make an enemy out of him. He clearly understood what it meant to be a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of a tiger. Moreover, there was still Qian Sinbao, the head eunuch. It wasn't time for him to compete with Mao Mu. That would only benefit others. He didn't have any intention of exploiting Mao Mu. On the contrary, he was here to befriend him. He believed that after today's matter, he would definitely maintain a good relationship with Mao Mu. At least on the surface. Sir Mao, actually, I invited you to drink tea this time because I have a request. But Sir Kai is really making things difficult for this humble one. If there's anything you need, just tell me, Mao Mu said politely. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.